everyone. Welcome all to the Snail Trail 4x4 podcast. If you like going off-roading in Toyotas, wrenching on Toyotas, camping in Toyotas, and maybe even poking a little bit of fun at Toyotas, and of course, hearing about how fantastic welded leaf springs do on Toyotas, then this is the podcast for you. That's right, ladies and germs. My name is Welder Tyler, and joining me in the studio is none other than Give Me All Your Broken Shit, Mr. Jimmy Jet.
Pretty much. That's pretty much how it goes.
We'll get to that in a little bit. Jimmy, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. I'm doing quite well. I have a little cold. Mm-hmm. Energy's not down. I just have like a scratchy throat. And a cough. I think
it's because you talked so much on the last recording.
It probably is.
You weren't
true.
used to it.
That's probably what it was. I don't know.
You haven't recovered from the last recording session?
No, strep throat since then.
Right.
But yeah, we spent the last few hours doing some work, and we have some house cleaning kind of to do.
Yeah, both. Yeah.
Besides that, I mean, things are going okay. I'm just waiting on some parts.
Yeah, aren't we all? Which parts are you waiting on? What are you getting going here?
My leaf spring.
Oh, where's your leaf spring right now?
We'll get to that in the future. I did have a phone call in with Trail Gear, and I might be buying new replacement parts for transmission or my T cases.
Oh, nice. Like the gears?
Yeah, the gears. Okay. You got me a little scared with yours blowing up. And and while we were out in Moab, I was hearing noises that I didn't like to hear in mine. So I'm probably going to redo all the bearings and everything.
Cool.
Make sure that everything's okay.
You're going to rebuild everything in the T case?
Yeah, pretty much.
The crawl box too and the T case?
Yep, both.
Nice.
The noise is coming from the crawl box.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit too as well, because that's a part of today's story. But let's see. Housekeeping stuff. Let's get into that quick and get that over with. That way we can get to the fun part that everybody wants to listen to.
Perfect.
We spent 3.5 hours, I don't know, whatever it was, going through and combining all the data from Patreon and iRate 4x4.
Yes. We did.
And so what we ended up doing was we shut down any new entries into Patreon. So if you're already in Patreon and you want to stay there, go for it. We're not going to hold it against you, but no new people can sign up on Patreon. Everything from here on out's got to be signed up over on iRate 4x4, and we will not be interacting at all on Patreon either. So it's just if you want to continue using that platform, you don't want to switch over for whatever reason, you're more than welcome to.
Right. Yeah.
And we'll still include you on giveaways and everything else, but there's not going to be any new signups. So we've taken all of the new signups over on iRate 4x4 and did a big old scrub of the database of both databases now to make sure that there was no duplicate people. So people were not signed up in both places. And we only found one person, which is encouraging.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
And then we've
already contacted you.
We've already contacted you. We've also found quite a few people who dropped Patreon, but then did not sign up on iRate, which we're not going to reach out to you if that's your choice. We're not going to bug people about it. But we've also found people...
Except for Whaling Wine and Whiskey.
Except for Whaling Wine. Yeah, we're going to give you shit about that one.
Yeah.
Chris, we're looking at you.
Well, apparently the Patreon account is under Chris's name. Mm-hmm. But it was both of their efforts to sign up for our Patreon account. But once we moved to Wheeling Wine and Whiskey, they canceled it and didn't sign back up.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll be reaching out to you guys and sending the bill collectors to you. I hear you also still owe a bill to Gear Wrench. Still.
Sounds good. Yeah. We'll just double the effort.
There you go. Yeah. But the data that we scrubbed on iRate was only through the end of April. So if you canceled Patreon in April and then didn't sign up for iRate until May, then we haven't looked over that data yet. So if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, I signed up, it's okay. You probably we have the data. We just haven't got to that point yet. So
we'll do that next month.
We'll do that next month. So The reason why we went through and did all that is because we have a really cool giveaway to do for April.
Yeah, we have this awesome bun welder donated by Sue and Chai Bun. Awesome giveaway. And so we had to combine the data of everybody that's still left on Patreon, and then with all the data of everybody that signed up over on iRate 4x4 and the $10 and $20 tiers, or the 120 or 240 annual.
The annuals one, yeah.
Yeah, so it's getting a little bit more complex, but hopefully it'll streamline here in a little bit, in a month or so for everybody. So yeah, so we went through all those names and got those, what did we have, 80 entries this time?
80 entries for the giveaway. Yeah. Yep, for April.
And we did the random number generator.
Thank you, Google.
Thank you, Google. And it was freaking hilarious. It went like, first click it went 13, I think. Second click, it went 45. Third click, it went 46.
Yep. And I clicked it and I was like, 1, 2, 3. And I was like, wait, did it change on the third one?
Yeah. And
we had to go back and look at the video.
Yeah, we went back to look at we shoot a video every single time. Usually I toss them up on Instagram just to prove it. But we have the videos just so in case anybody questions what's going on, we can show them a video. But yeah, we had to go back to the video and make sure that it went 45 and stopped and then went 46.
Yeah.
Maybe we know now for next time not to click so fast.
Yeah, right.
So who was our winner?
Mr. Matt Gardner.
Congratulations.
One of our parts specialists.
Yeah, Drift
Punk, man. Congrats, Matt. So we have a welder for you. We'll get in contact with you. I know you stay up to date on the podcast, so we'll contact you about how to get it to you.
Yeah, so. That and some tires. Trade you.
Perfect. So we got that, and then this month's giveaway is that 270-degree Delta wing awning and lights from Ironman 4x4. So super, really cool giveaway. Total is about $1,100-$1,200 on the website from Ironman 4x4. And so we're going to have them on the podcast later in the month too.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm excited to have them on. They can talk about the journey, talk about how Ironman 4x4 came from Australia and how they're coming into the American market, and tell us about all the cool stuff they have.
Yep. I'm excited for that. So thanks to those guys for getting us this awning for May's giveaway. If you want a chance at the awning, make sure you sign up over at iRate 4x4 and at the $10 tier, because the 20 is closed.
Yes,
the
it is.
box tier is closed. So make sure you signed up there by May 31st. 31 days in May?
I don't know.
Sure. The last day of May. How's that?
Yeah.
Make sure you signed up by then.
May 40th.
There you go. 42nd. So yeah, I think that about does it. Hopefully that all makes sense. It was, we got a little bit of a headache going through spreadsheet hell, figuring all that out, but I think we got it figured out. And so one of the other things that we were figuring out that took a long time to figure out was also birthdays.
Yeah. We got a happy birthday to some new people coming on last month. And I'm sure we have a bunch of people that have continued on with this merger.
So, that was one big thing that took a lot of time, was going through and figuring out, how many people were new people with coming over to iRate, new supporters of the channel, and how many people were coming over from Patreon, and having to figure those out and get the birthdays all correct. But we have it all in a file now moving forward. Should be great.
It was especially difficult when you guys had different names.
Right.
Some people sign, like, their PayPal account has their actual name, but they signed up on Patreon as a fictitious name. So that was fun to figure out.
Yeah, that was fun. I hate you guys, especially Mr. Pool Cleaning. You know who you are. All right, so we have a lot. Let's do FNGs first.
Okay.
So FNGs for April, we have quite a few. 12 of you? 11 of you?
Wow.
So that's really cool. They were waiting for the change to get over onto iRate. One of them, and feel free, if we say your name in this section, the FNG, to let us know that you were over on Patreon if you were, and we'll look you up and make sure we have the correct birthday in there for you.
Once again, the names were hard to figure out.
Yeah, if you had a weird name in Patreon, then yeah, you're... Anyways, so we have, I know there's a couple in here that we're going to have to go back and look through now that I'm looking at it. Aaron Little.
Aaron Little, thank you.
Evan Cook, which I thought we fixed, but it didn't come through properly. So we'll have to go back and look up your
Yeah, you definitely have been around.
Anthony.
No, Evan left for 4 months.
Oh, that's right. That's what Evan's was.
So you're starting anew.
Yep, you got a new birthday.
Congratulations. Welcome.
Congratulations. Anthony Martinez.
Thanks, Anthony.
Trenton Roberts.
Thanks, Trent.
Yeah, we have a podcast with him, so go back and look that up. Was during KOH this year. Andrew Klampt.
Thanks, Andrew.
Douglas Higbee.
Thanks, Douglas.
Wesley Vieira.
Thanks, Wesley.
Nathaniel Perkins.
Thanks, Nathaniel.
Corey Cairns.
Thanks, Gear Wrench Corey.
Thanks, Gear Wrench Corey. I thought he was signed up before that.
Nope,
so
never.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
He just signed up now.
Look at him supporting us. He supports us in a lot of ways. We'll have to figure out something cool for him.
I gave him a special Snail Trail shirt.
Oh, that's cool. And we might have his axle done here soon too. My goal is to get it done this week. So
nice.
Dave McKinney.
Thanks, Dave.
From Rubicon Trail Adventures. Ryan Musta.
Thanks, Ryan. And
Casey Hallinan.
Thanks, Casey.
Thanks, guys. So yeah, it's really cool seeing the support that you guys give us. We have some fun interviews lined up with the new software, which has been a lot of fun to play around with. And they've just expanded it, which will make things even easier for us to get interviews with people. So be on the lookout for that. Without the support of you guys, we wouldn't be able to get software like that. That makes interviews really nice audio quality and fun, good listening for your ear holes. So that's the FNGs.
Okay.
1 year birthdays. There is one, and he signed up on April 1st. I feel like we did this already.
I don't know.
Because it's Robert Hogg, Mr. Weld's Taco.
Well, you get an extra birthday.
You get an extra birthday. Or were we doing May birthdays? So we did the FNGs for April and then May birthdays? That's how it is, because we do 2 different months.
Is that what we do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So FNGs for April, there you go. So birthdays is now May. That's what it is.
Okay.
We'll figure it out eventually.
One of these days.
All right. So May birthdays, we have 0 1 year May birthdays.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. 2 year May birthdays, we have 0.
Mm-hmm. Everybody signs up in April for the gift box tier.
Mm-hmm.
3 year.
3 year birthdays, we have 1.
Really?
Yep.
Oh.
Because you know why?
Isn't this the first time we ever signed up on Patreon?
Yep. This is the first.
This is our longest lasting
our
supporter.
Oldest patron still around, because we actually hit our 3 year, the show's 3 year birthday.
Yeah.
Was May 2nd, I believe.
Yeah. We just rolled by.
Which we can't look it up anymore because we're over 300 episodes.
Which we'll talk about that in a second.
We'll talk about that in a second too. But yeah, Dustin Ferguson, Mr. Fergie Fab. Yeah, our oldest supporter.
Thank you. So
the first 3 year Snail Trail birthday, Mr. Fergie Fab. That's pretty cool.
Yes.
So that's actually like really cool. I think it's pretty neat to see that we've been doing this now 3 years and we've had somebody with us along with the whole rhyme too.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So
you've given us way too much money.
We should do like a buy 4 years, get one free. Oh man. So cool. Thank you, Mr. Fergie Fab. Yeah, it's really cool to see that, and a special shout out to you for being along this journey with us all 3 years here. So, let's see. Along with having our personal 3 year birthday for the show as of May 2nd, we found out recently that a lot of podcasting apps, mainly it's because iTunes does this, they only show the last 300 episodes. Right. And so because of that, we are now over 300 episodes in total. Right. So we're on like episode 293 6 or
seven,
7 whatever it is.
7.
Fuck, that's a lot. So we're at 297, but we had all the TTTTTs, we had the shop talks, and other stuff, kind of bonus episodes wrapped in there. So we have over 300 episodes. It's more like 323, I think, right now. 440 hours of content. All free for everybody. But those first, 223 episodes don't show on our normal podcast feed.
The first 23 episodes.
Yep, exactly. The first 23 now.
Yeah. It only shows the most recent 300.
Exactly. So those first 23 episodes, if there's any new people finding the podcast and you're listening to this episode first, you got to go back and look for season 1. So we have it all set up now where pretty much all the major podcasting apps, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon, Pandora, iHeartRadio, they're should all be set up with season 1 of the podcast. So what season 1 is going to be is we're going to start adding shows onto it, 10 to 20 shows at a time, that will no longer be showing up on our normal feed here. And then we'll grow season 1 over time until it gets to about 200 episodes. And then we'll create a season 2.
Okay.
So we'll have 300 episodes all the time in our main feed, our main show, the one that you guys all have subscribed to in your podcasting apps right now. And then we'll add seasons as shows no longer show in the latest 300 episodes.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So more or less our main feed, the one that you are listening to right now, will always have the most current ones.
Yep.
But if you want to listen to episode 0 or episode 1, you need to go look for season 1.
Exactly.
And then once season 1 fills up, I mean, this will be a while, but
it'll be a while.
We'll have to start a season 2.
Exactly. Yep.
And then we'll go on from there.
Yep.
But so most recent stuff here, if you're just now finding us and you want to listen to the very early episodes, you have to search for season 1.
Exactly.
And what is it? Is it Snail Trail 4x4 season 1?
Yep. Snail Trail 4x4 Off-Road Podcast season 1.
Got it.
Yep. And then it's the same picture. It just has like a red season 1 stamp over it, horozontally over the picture. So yeah. Hopefully that makes sense too. We got some growing pains going on, some back end changes to the podcast that we have to adapt to in order to scale the show. And that's what's going on. So hopefully that all makes sense. Let us know if it doesn't.
Yeah. That or once we actually get to episode 300, let's just change the name completely.
Start a new podcast.
Yeah.
Well, people still haven't found our other podcast.
That's
true. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think that does, we have a voicemail.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Let's do a voicemail real quick, and then we'll get into the main topic, the campfire discussion. Are you ready to go?
Yes.
All right, here we go.
Hey, guys, it's your favorite American stripper, Reed. Not the Australian Reed, though. I just watched a YouTube video and wanted to share about why smoke from a campfire, quote, follows you around. It has to do with the convection air currents coming towards the fire. Standing in front of the fire disrupts these convection air currents and leaves nothing to stop the other air currents from pushing the smoke towards you. I guess I've been lied to my whole life about how beautiful I am. Thanks, science. Also, if someone wants to work on my truck for free, that would be great. I need a front axle rebuild. Thanks. Bye.
I would love if people worked on my truck for free.
Right. So pretty much you're creating an eddy.
Yeah, you're creating an eddy. And that's why the smoke comes back at you.
But if the entire fire is surrounded by people,
that's
why is it always coming at me?
That's a good question, because you're fat and you're creating the biggest eddy.
No, I'm going back to beautiful.
Going back to beautiful. Okay. Thank you, Reed.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thanks for sharing.
So cool. All right, that does it.
Yes.
If you guys have any fun science facts you want to shoot over our way, feel free to call in. Leave us a voicemail about it. The number there is 916-345-4744. You got that number?
916-345-4744.
That's it. Good job.
Thanks.
Does everybody else out there have the number? Because we're not saying it again. 916-345-4744. We're going to put subliminal messaging into the show from now on. Anyways, so I think that does it. Let's get over to the rest of the Moab trip, shall we?
Yeah.
All right. Everybody go ahead and grab your drinks, grab your coffee, and we'll be right on back with the rest of Moab, Cruise Moab 2022. Oh,
Oakley dokley.
Welcome back, everybody, to today's campfire discussion, which is more just story time, because that's what we love to do here on Snail Trail 4x4. We like to tell stories. Not all of them are true. It's kind of like Dan Mick. Some of them are made up. But we have a fun story for you today because we're finishing off Cruise Moab, which definitely ends with a doozy here. So
yes.
Let's see. I believe we left off with you coming home at like 1:30 from going out drinking with Dimitri and Rob.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And
okay.
Morgan, was Morgan there too, you said?
No.
Okay. Just Demon Rob?
Maria.
And Maria.
Yeah, Anthony and Maria.
That's right. Anthony Maria. Okay, cool. So you came back.
Yep.
Had some drinks.
Yeah, we went out, had some drinks, went to that nice spot, went out to Woody's, which was the eclectic spot, and then came home. The assistant always sends me out with these, it's not Pedialyte, but it's something like Pedialyte, and it's in a powder form. And so I dumped myself, I made some water and what's it called? I can't even remember what it's called. And the electrolyte powder stuff, and pounded that and went to bed.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, how did that work out for you Friday or Saturday morning? Because Saturday morning we had an early start.
We had an early start.
It was an hour earlier than what we had been doing because we were doing Golden Spike on Saturday, which is the longest trail in Moab, 20 miles long, and it takes you across 3 trails.
Yep.
Poison Spider, Spike,
Golden Spike,
Golden
and
Spike.
Gold
Bar Rim.
Gold Bar Rim.
Yep. And so meet time was 7:30 a.m., leave at 8 a.m.
Yes.
So how did your electrolytes work out for you?
I was slow, but I was feeling okay.
Okay.
I didn't really as much as I probably made it sound like I was partying, I wasn't really raging.
Yeah, it didn't sound like you were, based on I guess what you told, story you told, which could be true, could be false.
I think I tried to do the math, and I had a beer at dinner, and then maybe 2. We'll count 2 just for the sake of it. And then I went to that fancy restaurant, and I had 2 drinks there. And then I had a shot and a beer at dinner, or at the other bar. And so I was up to 6. Since whenever we had dinner at
it's not bad
7.
Then. Yeah. So course of 6 hours, you had 6 beers.
Yeah.
6 drinks.
So, it wasn't, I wasn't that bad. They were out.
You weren't you were at the listener meet or the patron snow
not
run?
at all. No, I was trying to behave myself. I had water in between a lot of those drinks.
Okay.
So I was good. I was just probably, I was probably tired and maybe ever so slightly hungover. I don't even think I was really that hungover. I took some ibuprofen in the morning and drank some more water, and
nice.
we were wheels up, and we got there right at the nick of time.
How was Dimitri and Rob?
I have no idea. They weren't.
Why don't you have an idea?
Well, they weren't on our run.
Yeah.
And we left before they got up. So I don't know how they were.
Did they even go wheeling at all on Saturday?
I don't think so.
I don't think they did either.
I don't know.
I think they slept in because they were hungover.
Yep.
And they were like, well, it's 11 a.m. now. We're just going to go.
Yeah. I think, we got a text message from them noonish.
Noonish, yeah.
And say they were heading home. So, yeah, I don't think they went out.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So anyways, Saturday morning was hectic for me. I tried to get up early and swap out my clutch slave cylinder.
Right.
So my clutch is still not fully disengaging, which from everything I've read is not a clutch issue. It's the master and slave cylinder issue for some reason. And so I found a slave cylinder at the Napa in town, and I went to try and put it in and get it bled there, and no dice. It didn't fit.
Really? Oh no.
Yep. It was the wrong fitment. And turns out there's two different clutch cylinders, but they're both listed as interchangeable parts in parts stores kind of thing, and they're not interchangeable.
Got it.
So
sort of like my interchangeable alternator that has different plugs.
Exactly. So I put in the wrong clutch cylinder, and then I was trying to put in the clutch cylinder. It wasn't going in, so I had to cancel the install and put my old one back in.
Wow.
And
so
then,
you bled it in everything, and then no dice.
I couldn't. It wouldn't mount to the transmission, the bell housing.
Got it.
Yeah. So the fitment was in the mounting flange to the bell housing. It was incorrect.
Okay.
So once I found out it couldn't mount, I had to take it back off, and then put the old one back on, and then bleed the old one. And Lee came out to help me bleed it, and it wasn't bleeding.
Really?
No matter how much we probably sat there and pumped it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes maybe, and it was still pumping air through the line. And so no, I was not letting the master cylinder go dry.
Oh yeah.
I was keeping it full of fluid.
So
there's either a leak in the line somewhere, but I'm not leaking fluid anywhere.
Right.
So I'm wondering if there's a seal out in the master or slave cylinder.
Yeah, or a clog.
Or clog maybe? I don't know. Something weird's
not
going
letting
on.
Fluid down.
Maybe. So yeah, something's going on with the master and slave cylinder, and I think because it's not bleeding properly, there's air in the line, and that's why my clutch is never fully really disengaging.
Okay.
So anyways, I spent like an hour and a half on the stupid clutch slave cylinder. What that should have taken 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, you did spend a little while.
And so by the time I got it all buttoned up and good enough back to the way it was, I ran in and grabbed the rest of whatever breakfast was on the counter and just threw it into the 4Runner with me. And we took off to go to the meetup spot. Mm-hmm. So met up with the group. Turns out Keith was our leader for the day. What was he driving, Jimmy?
An LJ.
He was driving a Jeep.
Yep.
Out at Cruise Moab.
Yep.
Trail leader.
Yep.
In a Jeep.
In a Jeep.
Did we give him grief for that at all throughout the day?
Yep.
Yeah.
I definitely did.
I did too.
And
man.
As much as I don't think he really appreciated it.
I don't think so either. I don't think he saw the humor in it, the irony. So,
you know what he did that I don't know. I mean, I was gonna say he irked me, but I'm not sure if it's just a something that I do not appreciate.
Okay.
Is he called all vehicles Jeeps? That was
starting to bug me for a while.
You know, he's like, okay, you know, like let's move the Jeeps along.
Yep. All right, everybody back to the Jeeps.
Yep. You know, especially at a Toyota event.
Yeah.
You know, but to some way it's, and I don't know what the proper word for it is, but it's, what is it called? What I don't want to call it racist.
Yeah.
But, you know, segregation. I don't know. You know, it's like, you know, people don't want to be grouped into one specific category as people. And I don't want to be grouped into the category of Jeeps.
Yeah.
You know, to some extent, and I think I said this over our personal radio, not on the group level, on the group chat, over the radios, is I said, I kind of feel like I want to boycott all trails that end in Jeep trail.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Cause those are Jeep trails. It's not allow Fords, Toyotas, you know, any other vehicle. That's a Jeep trail.
Samurais can't go on Jeep trails.
Samurais can't go on Jeep trails.
No.
They just need to call it a trail.
Yeah.
Why call it a Jeep trail?
Yeah.
Right. It's not just for Jeeps. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. That's one of my like pet peeve funny things along with horse poop, but you know,
I mean, I could give him a pass, maybe pushing it a little bit, but give him a pass on saying, all right, everybody, let's get back to the Jeeps and go, whatever. But when he started saying, hey, how's your Jeep doing?
Yeah.
To everybody, to different people in the group throughout the day. Yeah, hey, how's your Jeep going?
Yeah.
That was, I was like, okay, that's not.
I think I came over the radio and said, I think you're the only one with a Jeep.
Yes.
He's like, oh, it's the generic term.
Yeah. I was like, no, it's not really.
Yeah. So. It is in your mind because you own a Jeep.
Yeah. So anyways,
all right.
I'm curious if other people do that too. Like if Toyota or Samurai or Bronco owners, if somebody says to them, hey, let's go Jeeping, or hey, what's your Jeep doing, or something? I don't know.
Nobody says let's go Toyoting.
Right. Toyoting. Because that means you're banging off the rev limiter and running into stuff.
Maybe.
Right?
Yeah. When I was writing blogs, I was always trying to be more generic. Mm-hmm. And I would say like, and your truck. Mm-hmm. Right.
But then is a Jeep a truck? I guess a Gladiator is.
Gladiator. I mean, is a truck with a truck bed. I don't know. Maybe I should say off-road rig.
I always try and say rigs.
Rigs. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It makes sense. I think that, is a Jeep an SUV?
I think technically, yes. Sport utility vehicle.
Okay. Yeah. So I wonder if Jeep owners get upset at saying if I called it a truck.
Maybe you should start doing that. Let's start doing
sweet truck, bro.
Yeah. That'd be interesting. I'm gonna start doing that to people and seeing if it elicits any reactions.
I bet you they're gonna say it's not a truck, it's a Jeep.
Yeah. We'll see how that goes.
Anyways, we diverge.
Yeah.
Diverged.
So anyways, Keith,
he was a great trail leader.
He was a great trail leader.
He was an awesome guy. He was fun.
The thing that bugged me for the day was he was doing a really, really good job at being a tour guide.
Yes, he was.
And it bugged me because I was in the back of the line almost all day long. And so he'd be like, all right, so we're coming up on this obstacle. You want to, the left line is here, right line is here, right middle line is this, blah, blah, blah. And like, it's like 3 obstacles ahead of me.
Right.
And so I'm like, he's just telling me completely unnecessary information.
I know. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
What, it's like left line is hard line. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm not sure what obstacle you're on.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to come up to an obstacle and just look and go, I'm going to try the left line because I think that's the hard line, Yeah, I did that kind of, I don't know what to do in that circumstance either.
You just kind of put up with it and you just kind of go, I'm just going to ignore the radio.
To some extent, but he's also helping the people that are 5 cars behind him.
100%.
And in a way there maybe should have been a middle person. I don't know. There was 13 in our group. 12. Yeah. There was 12 in our group.
12 to start off. Yeah.
12 to start off. Mm-hmm. So, and we weren't really that spread out, but the thing was that when you're the last 2 to 3 people in line,
I kept getting us spread out.
Yes. But when you're the last 2 to 3 people in line, the front group is hitting different obstacles than what you're hitting, and you're hitting things that they talked about a little while ago. Mm-hmm. So you're listening to what he's saying, but then you're driving up onto an obstacle that you have to remember what he just said now that he's saying something else. Mm-hmm. So it was a little bit difficult.
And it was
I wasn't too concerned though, because I could hit all the obstacles.
That's why I wasn't really paying too much attention to the obstacles, but there was points when he was explaining the flowers.
Yeah.
And some of the biology around. And he goes, okay, yeah, here on the right-hand side, we've got this red flower and blah, blah, blah. And by the time we get up there, I'm like,
is it that red flower?
Is it that red flower? Is it that one over there? Is this the spot for it? And I don't know. It just seemed like I wish I had been right behind him rather than further back in line.
Yeah. So that part was interesting. I do remember that because he was talking about a cactus flower that was blooming and it really looked like it was a burgundy, like a wine red. And then he said on the other side, there's Indian paintbrush. And then you can see that's a bright red. And luckily for me, your dad knew exactly what Indian paintbrush looked like. And I was like, well, that flower looks like it's a wine color, so we figured out that location when we went through. And then he was like, shortly after was like a yellow flower. And we're like, oh, here's some yellow flowers. Okay. So yeah. We were able to figure that one out. But
the secretary and I were bummed because we went by and we're like, we have no clue what they're talking about.
Yeah.
We can't figure it out. So anyways, note, I guess, for everybody out there, if you take a trail ride with Keith as your trail leader, try and get up there within like 2 to 3 vehicles of him.
Yeah.
Because he does a really good job at being a tour guide, and he has some really cool information. But you got to be up there in order to really garnish the information, make use of it.
Right.
So
unless you're stopping at Mary Jane's grave, which he accidentally passed.
That's right. Oh man, that was fun. I started pushing the buttons, I guess. I don't know what it would be the right word for.
You were questioning.
I was questioning. I just wanted to know if he knew the story about Mary Jane and the getting bit by the poison spider that we learned from Dan Mick, which is completely, totally all made up by Dan Mick.
Right.
And the grave that's there was put there by Dan and his trail guides.
Right.
And I wanted to see how much of that Keith knew. And he told us the whole story about Mary Jane and getting bit by a spider and the grave site. And he said that we were probably going to, try and stop at the grave to take a look at it, let people look at it. So then I asked if anybody had found the headstone in a while.
Yeah.
Because I was hoping that we'd stop there and look at it and see if anybody stumbles upon the headstone that Dan put in there. But we ended up not stopping and kept driving right on by it. So we stopped and got, the secretary got a couple pictures of it.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, other than that, we didn't get to stop and let the whole group check out Mary Jane's grave.
That's true. We are jumping a little bit ahead.
Yes. So let's go back to the beginning of the day.
Yep.
Keith ended up being a lone trail guide. We didn't have a tail gunner scheduled for the event.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure Nick, who ended up being tail gunner, was just like one of the first people there.
It was voluntold.
I think it was voluntold.
Maybe. That makes sense.
Yeah. So Nick has a really nice built FJ80 on 40s.
Yeah.
From
Sexy.
Washington, works for Torfab.
Yep.
So it was fun to hang out with him all day. A lot of fun. Turns out he's bought a Morphlate before.
Oh, yeah?
And we've talked over email quite a few times.
Oh, funny.
And so once we connected the dots, I was like, oh, that's cool. So Nick was our tail gunner for the day. We pretty much rode in the back of the trail all day with Nick.
Yeah.
For the most part. And then everybody else was up front kind of with Keith. And I was the slowpoke for the day. So, we kept getting big gaps between everybody else and then me. And then we had a couple people throughout the day kind of trading off between you and me.
Yeah,
and then
in
Nick.
between us and Lee.
And Lee, that's right. And Lee was there. So
yeah. So why were you going so slow?
Because the Forerunner jostles quite a bit. It's not a bumpy jostle, but it jostles. And the secretary hates the jostling.
Got it.
So I went as fast as I could, and while not jostling around the rig at all and letting the suspension soak up everything so the cab stays as level as possible.
Got it.
So if it was by myself, I would have taken off and just been way up there.
I think to some extent that's my problem with Bobcat is Bobcat can probably handle going faster.
Probably.
But I don't want to do it faster. I don't want to go faster.
No.
I'm not personally, I don't find the comfort level of going faster.
Yeah. And I think I'm more okay with jostle than you are. And I think that's why I go around faster typically.
Possibly. Your dad and I were talking about that on one of the trails, and we were saying how, and I think it was like when we were cruising back from Gemini Bridges, and we were like saying how smooth your rig looks compared to, your dad was talking about his rig.
Oh,
and then it being behind you in his rig and him feeling like it's so bouncy, but your rig looks like a gliding smooth across things.
Interesting.
And then I said the same. I feel the same way in Bobcat, and he's like, "Yeah, I think riding in Bobcat, it feels rougher than what we're watching Tyler's rig do.
Interesting.
Watching Kermit do.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I've had multiple people. Kevin Poole has told me, and my dad has told me that riding behind me on the Rubicon, it looks like I'm being really smooth and I'm able to I go a lot faster through the trail than they do. Mm-hmm. And they're like, they felt like they can't go fast at all because they're blowing up their suspension. I'm like, it feels fine to me.
Yeah.
But
I think maybe it's the added, Kevin Poole has a Forerunner. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a first gen, so maybe a little lighter, but your dad has a truck like I do. And both of ours are lighter.
No, he's heavy. He's probably 6,000 pounds. Yeah.
Really?
His entire frame is plated.
Oh, damn.
And he's flat bellied. So yeah, he's got a lot of weight on there. So yeah, I don't know. that's all going to be changing here soon with Kermit. So we'll see how that turns out.
Yeah, definitely.
But started out the day and went up, started going up Poison Spider, right?
Yes, we did.
So Poison Spider was fun. I enjoyed it. There was a couple tricky spots, but nothing that was really off camber. I never throughout the entire day felt like there was a spot where I was concerned about Kermit the entire day.
Okay.
And so Poison Spider was great. It was a fun time. That was where you ended up taking Bobcat up the ledge that Keith was like, yeah, nobody in our group can do that.
Yeah. That was Poison Spider. Yeah, that was was that Poison Spider or Golden Spike? That was Poison Spider because the other Cruise Moab group caught up to us there.
That's right, yes.
And they were only doing Poison Spider.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was on Poison Spider. There was also some fun obstacle. Nick and I were talking before we even left the trailhead about to see who could stay on two-wheel drive longer.
Yeah.
And we drove this first switchback, and you followed the group and went wide, and you came across the radio and you're like, Jimmy, it would be so much easier if you just climbed that wall.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I put it in 4-wheel drive right then.
Yeah.
And climbed the wall and went up instead of trying to struggle and go around the corner or do whatever.
Yeah.
And then Nick tried. I saw him try a few times. I stayed back and waited
in two-wheel drive?
In 2-wheel drive. And then all of a sudden he popped up and I'm like, oh, he went to 4-wheel drive too.
Yeah. And
so then for the most part, for the rest of the climb, for the rest of the day, I was pretty much in 4-wheel drive from that point. I think clicked it out once or twice, but...
I don't know. There was some fun obstacles. I don't know if any of the names of the obstacles.
I don't know any of them either.
There was a couple of, once we kind of got into the canyon coming up near the top of the climb to get up on top of the mesa, there's a couple really fun climbs in there. And there was one in particular that eventually Keith goes, all right, up until this point, he had been saying, all right, this upcoming obstacle, easy line is here, hard line's over here, but pick whatever's good for your vehicle.
Yeah.
And so up until this point, that's what was going on. And then we reached a spot where he goes, okay, there's a pretty gnarly obstacle up here. It's got a switchback in the middle of a climb.
It's got a 90-degree turn.
90-degree turn. You guys might want to get out and look at it before you attempt it. Right. And so the whole group stopped, got out and checked it out. And I'm looking at him like, looks okay. Looks fine as long as you can make the turn.
Yeah.
Then 90-degree turn, that's pretty an interesting spot to turn at, just because there's a lot of little potholes and stuff that you can get people hung up on their undercarriage. But I'm like, I'm not going to have an issue. I'm too tall.
We're tall. We don't have a concern with that. Yeah. And if you do back up too far, the hill that you're on sort of it does round off to sort of a cliff on the two other sides.
That's true.
So there wasn't an endless amount of room to jockey your vehicle around, but there was enough room to do a 3-point turn.
Yeah.
So, and there was a few rigs that did drive up there, went wide, backed up, and got a good straight line on the hill to climb.
Yeah. So it was fun kind of watching people get up there, guiding people. That was one thing so that we kind of talked about a little bit. Last year at Cruise Moab, we were told that they weren't allowed to spot anybody.
Right.
And so this year I was kind of like staying back, kind of letting Keith be the trail lead. And people were asking for spots and Keith wasn't really spotting anybody. And so I just kind of jumped in because I was like, hey, you're looking like you're struggling. Let's get you some help here. And I started spotting. And then, towards the end of the group, somebody was like, hey, can we get a spot? And I was kind of like looking up at Keith because I was like, I don't want to step on toes. This is your run.
Right.
And he goes, I don't know. Who do you want to spot you? And they're like, I don't care, whoever. And I was like, go for it. It's your run. I was like, you go for it. Like, if you're willing to, go for it, Keith. And that's when he stepped in and started spotting people. But it was a fun little spot. There was some, I don't want to say under-equipped, marginally equipped rigs that struggled up that spot. But we got everybody up with, just a little bit of fixing of their line. I remember there was one person who was trying to come up and he just wasn't making it. And we moved him over an inch.
Oh yeah.
And then he popped right up.
Yeah.
And then Nick did the same thing. He kind of came up the wall, of it. He cut the corner, right? And came out the wall similar to what you did.
Right.
And he climbed it just in the perfect spot. Like if he was 1 foot one way or the other way, he would have walked right up it. But he was in the perfect spot where his tire got caught in an undercut.
Oh, God.
And I was looking at it and I was like, we just need to move your ass end over a foot. Either direction, doesn't matter, whichever way you want to go. And you're going to pop right up it. And he goes, really? I said, yeah. And so we moved him over a foot and he walked right up it. And I was like, see, there you go.
Yeah. I thought it was funny. I don't know what you were doing, but when we both drove up, like I was right behind you up towards that obstacle and then you stopped.
Yeah. Somebody, I forget why I had stopped.
And you had stopped long enough because I let you do the first climb and then you got to the top.
Yeah.
And there was plenty of room. So I started driving up behind you and you stayed stopped.
Yeah.
Right. And then so I pulled up next to you and I looked at you and you were like not doing anything. Right. So do you remember?
I don't remember what I was doing there. I remember it being in the middle of doing something.
Okay.
And then I was literally just about to take off and go when you pulled up next to, I could see you starting to pull up around me. And I was like, well, I don't want to go while Jimmy's trying to come up and around me.
Yeah.
And so I just sat there and that's when you pulled up and I was like, what you doing?
Yeah.
And you were like, what are you doing? And I was like, what are you doing? You're like, I don't know. I'm going to go. And so you just, just went and I was like, all right, whatever.
Yeah. Cause you were doing the line that I would have originally done, but because I had to turn, I went inside of you.
Yeah.
I took this more aggressive line up somewhat of the wall. And I walked right up it. It was no problem. And I would know when I crested the top, I heard Keith go, that's articulation for you folks.
Yep.
You know, and I crested and went up there and parked. And then you walked right up behind me, like no problem up that hill.
Yeah. So anyway, it was fun. That little obstacle was a good time.
Yeah.
Just before that obstacle, Norm in the red FJ Cruiser.
Yeah, I was trying to remember when that happened. Okay, yeah,
it was just before that.
It was on this little hump, right after this little hump before the climb. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he found out that his skid plate was no longer attached to his vehicle in one part, on one side, and he had a bolt hole that had wallowed out. And
the bolt stripped out.
And the bolt was stripped, so he couldn't tighten it down. He couldn't reattach it anyway. The skid plate, the hole was wallowed out. The bolt was stripped. And the nut that it's supposed to like hook into was inside his cross member.
Yeah. Just floating around.
Just floating around and loose in his crossbar. I was like, how did you get this on in the first place? So I told him, I was like, hey, look, I've got scrap metal. I have a welder. We can pull it out and we can put just a little gusset, a little connection between the cross member and your skid plate in order to make sure it holds the rest of the day. And we can do it in such a way that it'll be easy to cut that out later if you want to, re-nutsert it or whatever you want to do to bolt it in later. And he goes, okay, cool.
Next year.
Yeah.
It'll still be there
next year.
It'll be a permanent trail fix.
Right. And so, after the obstacle where everybody got out and to take turns going up that obstacle,
we talked to Keith
and was like, hey, just FYI, we have a short trail repair. It should only take 15, 20 minutes. I just need to weld something on the cruiser real quick. And he goes, okay, there's a great lookout right up ahead here, not too far away. And once we get to it, we're going to stop and kind of enjoy the scenery. And you guys can do it there. I said, perfect. So that's what we did.
Hindsight, we should have just fixed it when all the rigs were stopped and waiting.
I agree. Yeah.
And going up, you should have just done it then. You probably would have been halfway through working by the time you guys would have needed to start driving up.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't have been stopped a second time.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
Anyways.
Yep. So that was, yeah, I agree. And I even asked Norm, I was like, hey dude, when we're stopped here, pull up next to me and we'll take care of it now. And then everybody started going up and looking at the hill. And I was like, all right, we'll take a look at this here first. And then we got distracted by getting everybody through. So, not too far away was the lookout spot. So as we started approaching the lookout spot, I told Norm, hey, I'm going to park off to the right-hand side on this flat spot. Make sure you come over and park next to me.
Right.
And he did. And I pulled out all the welding gear, the grinder, some scrap metal, and we proceeded to weld a little piece of scrap metal between his skid plate and his frame. and welded it there. And as far as I know, it held all day long. Didn't have any issues. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a good little trail repair. I mean, it was quick. It was easy. It wasn't very timely. I mean, it was that, maybe that sounds bad. It wasn't an immense amount of time.
Yeah.
So, not too long after that, we were on our way.
Yep. And I used the Premier welder with the stick rod. So I used some 7018 and burned it in with 7018 rod. So,
Norm said that it looked like a professional weld.
No way. Not those ones.
I don't know if he's ever seen a professional weld, but
no, there was after because I had turned up the engine to a certain point and it wasn't quite hot enough and I could see some porosity going through. It wasn't really penetrating. And so I yelled at whoever was controlling the engine, turn it up a little bit more. And after they turned up again, I think it was Lee was doing it. And it turned up again. The weld got a lot better. The upper weld looked pretty good. The second half of the bottom weld looked pretty good. But the first half of the bottom weld, I'm like, good thing that's not a structural holding anything structural.
Structural, like a skid plate that gets banged on.
Yeah, but it's all compression. It's not pulling it apart. So, so I did that, got on our way. And the next obstacle that had some excitement was the wedgie. Yeah. That one I do remember the name of.
Okay. Yeah, that wasn't too far after that.
Was that the wedgie or was there another obstacle where we kind of stopped to let people get around to the big group? And then there was an option of kind of going, there was like the big pull out area and a bunch of us went down after the pull out and then up like a 7 foot ledge and a bunch of other people went around it to the high side.
I don't remember.
I think that was before the first hill that everybody got out and looked at.
Okay.
But anyways, we got to the wedgie eventually. I do remember that one because it's a fun name.
Yep.
And it's essentially just a big V notch.
Yeah, it's a huge crack.
A huge crack in the slick rock there. And I ended up going up and around it.
Dirt Garage just posted a video about it.
Oh, did they?
Yep.
Nice.
So if you want to see what we're talking about, I think it's titled like V8 and Moab, V8 Toyota and Moab or something like that.
Okay, nice. So
anyways, yeah.
It's a big V notch.
You went around it.
I went around it.
I went through it.
You went through it. Lee went through it.
Halfway.
So as I'm going up and around, it's a big, almost like a little mini lion's back, right? It's just this big rock that's on a spine almost as you go up and around.
Okay.
The wedgie. So as I'm going up and around, I'm at the very top watching Lee go through. And all of a sudden, it looked like Lee went over and laid his FJ80 on its side.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it looked from my vantage point up above him, essentially. And so I'm like, whoa, Lee, stop. Turns out he never heard any of that.
Oh, really?
Because he has the same armrest that I have. I actually got the idea from him. I have his armrests. And he keeps his Bluetooth speaker for his radio in the cup holder on his armrest. And when it went over and he dropped his driver's side into the crack, the armrest fell out of the rig and his radio and armrest went into the crack and then down behind the rig.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So he never heard me on the radio going, stop.
Yeah. Oh, there's a learning experience for him.
Yep. But his front passenger wheel was 4 or 5 feet up in the air.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how he didn't lay it over. It should have laid over.
Yeah. I don't know how he didn't get any damage.
Right?
It was impressive.
Yeah. And so I boogied on down off of my little bypass and pulled up in front of him, jumped out, grabbed a strap out of the back of Kermit and ran over, threw it around his roof rack, and then just sat, pulled backwards and I'm like up on a hill now too. So I'm just kind of pulling on his roof rack, trying to hold it somewhat steady, waiting for other people to arrive.
Right. And then Norm showed up.
Yep.
Gave you a hand. And then I turned around actually and drove back.
I wasn't sure if you came running, or if you drove around. I just remember eventually you showed up next to me. Yeah. And I was like, oh good, Jimmy's here. Thank you.
I drove back.
Okay.
And then, I ran down the little hill to grab some of the strap.
Yeah.
So we yanked on the strap, pulled it tight. It leveled him out quite a bit right there.
Yeah.
And then so his suspension compressed on the side we were pulling, and that really did level him out quite a bit. Then we had him turn driver, and he, to bring his tire up.
Mm-hmm.
And then that really leveled him out a bunch more.
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, the strap was pretty useless.
Yeah.
But we just kept a little tension on it so it didn't slide away from us.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he leveled himself out after that and drove all the way out of the crack.
Yep. And then after that, I kind of sat there and waited looking at people to see if people wanted a spot or not. And some people did. So I spotted them and kept them on the right line rather than falling down in the crack. Everything went just fine and dandy and smooth after that. Mm-hmm. But right there at the wedgie is where the poison spider run caught up with us for the day.
Yeah. Well, we were just getting through, like the last rig went through,
Yep.
Nick went through as they were catching up.
Yep, exactly.
And then so we were ditching them as they were going through the obstacle.
Yep.
So
Casey was leading that run.
Yeah. Casey from
the Fresno club that we can't remember the name of.
Down in 559.
Yeah, the 559 guys.
It's raining outside.
It is raining. Yeah, dude, I don't know what's going on with the weather. We're getting our fourth winter.
Yeah, right.
Is coming through this week. So
speaking of that, little bird walk here. The package I put into your truck, it was out in the rain.
Yeah. Okay.
I threw it in the cab like a little while after I remembered that it was in the bed of my truck still. So it might be a little surface rust on some of that stuff.
Okay. That's fine.
All right.
We can clean it off.
Yep.
So, we continued on with the day. Left to said hi to Casey and then said goodbye to Casey real quick.
Yeah. Hi-bye.
And then took off, and that's where we came up to the next play area with the 3 optional lines where Keith didn't think anybody in our group could go up.
Yeah. Well, when you came to that obstacle, there were 3 drops. Like you were on the high side, and you had to choose which way to go down.
Yep.
Right. And I drove over to the left, not knowing this was the obstacle that he was talking about, that nobody was going to be able to go up.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, I don't want to go down that.
Yeah. I remember I was getting out to look because he said to the right is the easiest. The middle is still a steep drop off. He didn't recommend anybody doing it. If you wanted to try it, you could. And then to the left, he goes, nobody in our group's going to be able to do that. So don't go left. And I was like, I'll be the judge of that.
Yeah.
And so we both stopped at the top, and you got out to look, you were looking down the ledge, and you just went, it drops. Like you gave me this look like, don't come over this way.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go down the middle. So I started going down the middle, didn't look at it or anything. And there's a guy standing there, and he goes, yeah, you'll be fine. Just take it really slow and don't hit the tree. And I was like, there's a tree down here? He goes, kind of. He goes, just stay more to the driver's side than the passenger side. And I was like, okay, I'm trusting you. And he goes, yeah. And we're just going down and down. And the secretary's like, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. And I was like, it's fine. We go downhill really good. That's what gears are for.
Yeah. Yes, we
Doing
do.
downhill is awesome. I was like, hang on, you're going to be just fine. And eventually we stopped declining and just started going downhill. Right. And it was a pretty dang steep drop.
It was.
But we got to the bottom and hung out at the bottom, and then you came down, and then you went over to the ledge to play around on the right line to see if you could make it up it, and you did just fine. And that's when I was like, no, it's really annoying the stuff that Bobcat can do. He's gonna make it. Like,
yeah.
And then you walked right up. While I was going to the top to do something, I forget what I was doing. I was gonna spot somebody. So the guy with the Trepidors, the FJ80 with the Trepidors, wanted to try coming up the middle line.
Oh, okay.
But there was so much traffic coming down that nobody was letting him come through.
Okay.
And so I went up top to stop the traffic so that he could come up so that we can get our group moving. So as I'm going to hike up the middle line, there's a side-by-side coming down. They got like past the point of no return. And I immediately just went, no, stop. Like really, with this really concerned look on my face. And it's a guy, his wife, and 2 kids in the back seat. Yeah. And they immediately got these really big eyes and stopped. And they're like, what? And I was like, I'm just kidding. Come on through. And they were like, why would you do that? So got them down. And then I helped the guy with the Trepidors up. And then he came back down. And pretty much we took off from there after that.
I went up the wall again.
Mm-hmm. And I believe that spot there was where the 2 rigs left us.
Yes.
And we went down to a group of 10.
Yeah, because the group that caught us was the Poison Spider Run. and the two guys that left us at that point didn't want to do the whole trifecta. They were like, no, we're just going to do Poison Spider and be out. Yeah. And so they went with the Poison Spider group.
Correct.
And yeah, that's when they left us.
One of those guys was the Pacaroba, the coffee vendor that was hanging out. Yeah.
The other one was Land Tank.
Land Tank?
I think that's what the license plate said.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know much about it. I'm not in that world, the Land Cruiser world as much as others are. But Morgan and Lee were both like, is that the guy that owns Land Tank? And I'm like, what's Land Tank? And they're like, they're really big gas tanks for Land Cruisers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wonder if they knew each other then.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I ended up ordering a bunch of coffee from Pacaroba afterwards, and it should be in today, I think, at home. Cool. So I'll get to try out a bunch of their coffee and report back and see how it is.
Sweet.
So anyways, left from there and headed up for the rest of Poison Spider Mesa. And that's when we came around to the Mary Jane's grave and all that we got to talk about. And then we got over to Golden Spike.
Yeah, right before Golden Spike, there was a big hill that was an optional climb.
Okay.
And you could drive up the hill, get to the top. There was an American flag and a pretty good vista. And then you just more or less do a U-turn and you come down the other side of the hill. Okay.
I thought that was part of Golden Spike, but...
No, I think right as the drop when you're coming down where the FJ40 was like, I'm out of oil. I think that's the transition of Golden Spike and Poison Spider.
Gotcha.
Because I think once you come down somewhere in that range, right around there.
Yeah, right in there is where the transitions.
Gotcha. Somewhere they turn back around and head sort of back.
Okay.
I think when we continued on is when... we go on to Golden Spike.
Gotcha. Okay, so right around there as well, we stopped for lunch.
Yep.
And there was a really neat cave kind of dug out in the back of the rock, kind of down in that little wash. So I went up there and hung out in the cave.
Yep.
Nick worked on his compressor.
Okay.
His compressor wasn't working properly, so he couldn't turn on his lockers.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yep. And
the FJ80 added more oil.
The 40?
Oh, yeah. The 40 red FJ40 added more oil because just coming down the hill, he lost oil pressure. But then when he leveled out, it came back. So he put some more oil in.
Yep. And that was all the excitement there. We pretty much, from that spot, the cave is right next to the start of Eagle's View. I don't remember what the Eagle something. Yeah. Started that
Eagle
trail
Rare.
right there. Sure.
It's a good bourbon.
Oh, gotcha. But from lunch, we took off and headed up to Golden Spike and worked on the Golden Spike Trail.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun.
It was more aggressive than Poison Spider.
It was a little bit more aggressive. I still don't... The only obstacle I remember from Golden Spike was the crack and the golden steps. So... apparently we drove by Double Whammy. Double Whammy's optional.
Weren't your steps double whammy?
So that's what I thought. And I posted the video of me going up the steps, and Red Rock Crawlers commented on my video saying, that's not Double Whammy.
Oh.
That's the golden steps. Double Whammy is a different obstacle. And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. So I was like, where was Double Whammy then?
Yeah.
Because I would have liked to have at least seen it and see if I want to try it.
Right.
But apparently we did not do Double Whammy that day, according to Red Rock Crawlers.
Oh, okay. So, I do know that shortly after we left lunch, we were driving through the sort of the wash and down in the canyon. We had come up to some motorcycles that a guy had crashed, and he kind of broke his brake lever. And so, and they were asking if anybody had brake fluid, and I had brake fluid. So I went around, I did the bypass and went up and started helping the guy with the motorcycle and gave him like a thimble full of brake fluid. Those things take nothing. And you guys went up a pretty fun little obstacle that I kind of wish.
It was a fun little ledge.
Yeah, a fun little ledge that you guys climbed that looked fun. And I was kind of regretting going to, jumping ahead, to try to help and keep the line moving. I was like, man, I wish I would have done that obstacle. That thing looked cool.
It was a fun little ledge. I tried to crawl the ledge first and it wasn't going. And so I just backed up a foot and did what Dan Mick said, half throttle, half a second, and popped right up it. No problem. So
yeah. And then there wasn't a whole lot after that until kind of the crack. It was just ledges. We did get up to a pretty nice lookout.
Yeah.
Between there. that overlooked the uranium.
The uranium deposit ore place. Yeah. The tailings, uranium tailings.
And we kind of had snacks up there also and relaxed. And then, we drove down to the spike or the crack after that. And I was, after looking at the photos of me going through the crack, I realized that I wasn't turned enough. I wasn't at a big enough angle.
An extreme enough angle
to really flex my vehicle out that much. And I thought I was like, oh, I'll get a good angle, but I really needed to, because my truck is either long or has a decent enough flex that when the tires dropped in, it wasn't extreme enough. And I really needed to crank it around so that my rear driver tire and my front passenger tire pretty much dropped into the crack at the same time. Yeah. Kind of a scenario.
Yeah, which would be a pretty extreme angle. That's what Nick ended up going back and doing. Oh. So he backed up into the crack after he came through.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't, super, it was a little anticlimactic having, when Danica went through driving for him. And so he, as everybody was taking off, and we were dealing with your tire.
Yeah.
He backed up into the crack at an extreme angle.
Yeah, I heard.
And had some fun.
He flopped it a little bit.
Yeah.
But was able to pull it back out.
Yep.
Yeah. So my tire, I think I burped a bead.
Yeah.
When I pulled it into the crack or out of the crack. And so I had no pressure. I was running 3.5, 4 PSI. No, I think I was 4.5. I think
you were 4.5. Yeah.
4.5 PSI in the tires. No bead locks, no internal, external bead locks or anything. And it usually is fine. Well, usually I run it around 5, but so it was pretty low.
Yeah. So you burped a bead, we aired you back up.
Yeah, no problems.
And then we continued on to, there was a fun little optional obstacle there. I was going up a little ledge right after the crack and I was like, that looks fun over there. But I didn't want to stop and get out and look at the back side of it to see if I can go up it and take all the time.
Right.
And so I went up and around the little ledge. And then once I got around, I was like, oh yeah, that would have been a lot of fun. I was like, Jimmy, turn left and go up that ledge right there.
Yeah. So I did.
Yep.
And it wasn't that bad. I mean, the guy in the FJ40 was there. I don't know what his name was.
Charlie.
Yep. And so I was like, I'm coming that way. He's like, okay. And so I popped right up and then I was like, where do I go now? And he's like, turn driver. And I was like, okay. And then there was a pretty decent little drop off on the other side. And when I came off it slow, but when my, front end compressed, I bottomed out my rig. And then drove out of it fine. But then to get over to where you were, I had to continue driving the wrong way.
There was a crevice in between us and you had to keep going down this little
this is, I don't know, a flat surface, and until it became a crack that I could cross.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was funny.
Yep.
So what was next after that? Was that
that next was the steps.
The steps.
The steps was fun for me. I could have walked up it, but instead, I found the spot where I started losing traction. And so I was like, well, let's play around with the tires and the engine. Because that one time on Fordyce, when I went and got a ride with the guy in the 6-liter LQ9 engine and the 42-inch pit bulls.
Yeah.
The way he was wheeling was not crawling. He just throttled everything and then managed his wheel spin to get traction, not getting traction.
Okay.
So he would say he'd be up on a ledge and he'd get himself halfway up the ledge and he would increase wheel spin and to try and get up the ledge until he wouldn't get up it anymore. And then he would decrease wheel spin, but stay on throttle to kind of come back down the ledge so that he can increase wheel spin again to get momentum to bump up the ledge without ever coming off the ledge or going off the throttle.
Right. Okay.
It was really interesting style of wheeling.
Yeah.
And so I got to play around with that on the steps. And so I was sitting there and I would kind of crest the top step and come up, just almost get up there by throttling it, and just everything's spinning, nothing's hopping, and then I would not make it up, and I would let off the throttle a little bit and go down to 1,000 RPMs, And then once I kind of settled back down, hit it back up to 2,000, 2,500 RPMs and try and climb the ledge again, and then let it back down. And I just kind of kept doing that until finally I was like, whatever. And so I had essentially heated up the tires at that point.
Right.
And so I came back to a stop and then walked right up it after that, just crawled up it rather than trying to play around with a wheel spin and displacement, essentially. Okay. But that was really interesting to kind of feeling that aspect of playing around with throttle input and displacement to try and get up an obstacle rather than torque and gearing to get up and traction to get up the obstacle. So, yeah, the steps was fun to kind of play around on a little bit, and then continued on, and you just walked right up the steps, no issues.
Bobcat.
Yep, Bobcat length, 124-inch wheelbase.
127.
127, Jesus. So yeah, we continued on, and I don't really remember much after that.
That was the descent.
Okay.
The decline down. Morgan had to take a phone call. So Lee stopped and Nick stopped, and then you and I kind of putted along for a little bit. And then when we came to a corner when we were going to lose,
that's right. Okay.
Lose them out of our mirrors, we stopped and waited for them. And then the rest of the group had stopped down below.
Okay.
And then once we all kind of caught up, we scooted along, and it wasn't too far until there was the last real obstacle, and it was a non-optional obstacle that you had to go through.
You have to go through. Do you remember what it's called?
No, I don't.
The waterfall.
The waterfall.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, and so it was. I mean, in a way, it was a cliff. There was some rocks on the passenger side, and then there was a wall on the driver's side. And the wall was probably big enough to fit 2 vehicles to go up.
Yeah.
Not including the rock section.
Yeah, the red Tacoma, when he tried it, and he was an extended cab Tacoma, and he couldn't get his tires on top of the wall when he lined up for it.
And his rear tires were at the bottom?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's 124 inches roughly.
Yeah.
So, so it's pretty tall. And then afterwards, there was an off-camber section, or if you stayed high on driver, it was fairly level. Or if you went much farther passenger off the off-camber area, you're into this sort of like crack/rocky area.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe that. It was a little mini gulch.
Yeah, kind of.
I don't know. You're like down in this little hole that had an undercut ledge on the driver's side and just big rocks and boulders on the right side. So if you're narrow enough, you can squeeze between them. But if you're wide, you've got to climb the rocks on the passenger side. You can't really be straddling it at all on the driver. You can't use the ledge on the driver's side. It limits you. You have to be more passenger side on the rocks there.
Yeah. And then above that it flattens out and goes up to a corner.
Yeah. And so there was a lot of talks about different lines that to take up the first waterfall ledge. And there's a winch anchor point as well up there, drilled into the rocks. And so we're all kind of looking at it, talking about different lines. And you and I, and Keith was kind of like, yeah, you'd come up here, you'd sit here, and then winch up kind of thing. Or try it and not winch if you can make it. But pretty much it's just a wall.
Yeah. Before we got there, though, Keith was like, who's going to go first?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And then you came over the radio and you said the mini truck.
That's right. I said, I'll go first. I'm the mini truck.
Yeah.
And he goes, okay, cool. Mini truck first.
And I said, the red one. And I say, I'm in the red mini truck.
Yes, that was funny.
Or something like that. And so, yeah, unfortunately for that victim, that guy in the red mini truck, actually he took it in stride. He went first. But yeah, so we were talking about different options. And, Keith was saying, you're going to point your nose up the wall here, and then we're going to anchor you to the wall, and you're going to winch yourself up. Yep. And I think both of you and I are looking over at the rocky section going like, no, I'm going to drive to that rock, and then to that rock, and then to that rock, and I'll be up the wall.
Yep.
And then it looks more fun for me to go passenger
through this little gulch
thing, and then pop up that little wall on the backside of that gulch, and then be out of it.
Yeah.
And so the red mini truck, first guy went up, did he winched, right?
No, he made it.
He made it?
Yep.
Okay.
Just he tried it for a couple of times and wasn't making it, and then gave it a little bit of goose. And once he was able to get his front tires up on top of the wall, he was pretty good.
I followed that guy for a while on the trail, and he was very methodical about his wheeling. He knew his rig very well, and he knew where the tires were, and he crawled everything.
Yep.
He never Moab bumped any of it.
Yeah.
And he would get into situations where he wasn't making it crawling, and he would back up and slightly tweak a few things and try it again in a ever so slightly different angle and make it or not make it and adjust again.
He had a phenomenal feel for his truck and the terrain he was on. It was impressive watching him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, he was crawling the waterfall first, and then to bump it, he had to bump it. It wasn't like him.
Yeah. It was watching him through the trail. I'm just going to give a contrast. Was a complete opposite of why it was fun watching Charlie do the trail in the FJ40. Charlie would just launch himself up ledges, popping wheelies left and right. He was hopping the rig all the time. I was like, oh my God, he's going to all the axle wrap that's going on. He's going to snap his leaf spring. He's going to snap an axle. Something's going to happen here.
Yeah.
Nothing ever did.
Nope.
It was impressive. Yeah. So, the red Tacoma went up, and he just climbed the wall, just straight up, and
then stayed on the high side.
Up above,
and just walked straight through it. No problem.
Yep. And then gray FJ80 came up and through. Was it his turn, or what? Did you go next?
I went next.
I think you went next too.
Yeah.
And you were like, you and I kind of sat there and talked about it a little bit, and I was like, what line do you want? Just tell me what line you want and we'll get you on that line.
Yeah.
And you're like, I want this line. I was like, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you weren't just going to climb the little rock garden below and then set up on the ledge.
Passenger side up the big rock.
Yeah. Passenger side up the biggest rock there. That it was from the rock, it wasn't perfectly lined up with the wall so that you would climb the rock and the wall at the same time. You were going to have to climb up the rock and be really off camber until you hit the wall and climb up. And I'm sitting there thinking about it, and I'm like, if I hadn't seen you and watched you do rock chucker the day before, I would have been like, you're not doing this. There's no way you're going to be able to do this, Jimmy.
Yeah.
But it put your truck in a very similar position to what you did going up rock chucker.
Did my back wheel come off the ground?
I don't know. I was in front of you, but I would imagine your rear passenger came off the ground, but
Probably.
I don't know. But yeah, you're like, I want to go up that line. I was like, okay, we'll get you up it.
Yeah.
And you walked right up it. No problems whatsoever.
Yeah.
You didn't slip a tire.
I was off camber. But I was on the ground, it wasn't that bad. And then from the big rock, I dropped down to the wall. So there was a point at which when I was really high, and then it leveled out. And then by that point, my driver's side tire hit the wall.
Yeah.
Right. So then it kind of
starting to climb,
torqued me and climbed me up.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then my rear end, I think, went around the big rock. Yep. I don't think it went up it. Right.
Yeah. You were the benefit to doing it that way was your front passenger was pretty much on top of the wall when your front driver started climbing. And then that got you to the top. And then by that point, you're just so long, you were up on top of that side of the wall and you just went whoop right up it. And then you're lined up perfectly to go through the little gulch section.
Yeah. And then that worked out pretty good. I don't remember the gulch section that much. Besides, I think I did sort of the same thing. I went high there because there was a big rock at the top at the end of the gulch. At the end of the gulch on the driver's side, there was a really big undercut area.
Really big undercut. Kind of turns into this little V-notch thing. Yeah.
And I think I stayed passenger and climbed the big rock on the passenger side in the front, and then turned the whole rig driver to try to pivot the rear end around that and sort of shove one of the rear tires in that hole, but use the other tire to climb everything out. And that worked for the most part. And then, I drove up a little ahead, and then I parked up on another big rock at a crazy angle just for fun.
Yeah.
Later to realize that there was a lot more rigs to come up and I was in the way, and I had to remove my rig again.
Yeah. So you went up, and then the FJ40 went up next.
Yeah, and he kind of followed my line.
Kind of followed the same line, except he wasn't able to get up on that rock. And so
at the waterfall
on the passenger side. And so he fell off of it, and I was going to have him, he kept like just spinning tires, moving left and right, and just kind of walking back and forth across the waterfall face. And, he had gotten too far driver, and I was like, hey, let's just get you back passenger so that we can back you off and reset you. And so I said, just keep spinning your tires and just turn slightly passenger, and you'll just walk back across the face here. And when he did that, he ended up grabbing traction at some point and walked right up. And everybody goes, wow, that looked easy. And I was like, yeah, it's exactly what I meant to do.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that was funny. Yeah. We're like, well, we're going to back you off, and you like go turn passenger, swing you this way, and then we'll realign you. And he turned passenger and went up.
Yeah, walked right up.
Like no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he went into the gulch to play too.
Yep.
And he would have made it through if he would have had a longer vehicle for the most part. But where there was a point at which he just was undercut on his rear passenger, and then had to climb a wall on his undercut rear driver, had to climb a wall on his rear passenger.
And such a short wheelbase that his front tires couldn't do anything.
Yeah, they didn't have the grip. So there was a rock there that he had pushed backwards, and so you had him back up, and then you moved the rock in front of his tire, and then he walked up. Yep,
exactly. So moved it 1 foot, and he walked right up it. And so next was an FJ80. A couple FJ80s, I think.
Yeah.
One with the trepidors, and then another one that I don't know if he had lockers or not, but he came through and got high centered on his belly, coming through the little rocks at the bottom of the waterfall.
Right. Yeah.
And the whole time we're sitting there, Nick and I were looking at each other, and we were like, I had looked at Nick, I was like, I would have him on a completely different line than this. And Nick goes, I would too. And so we're like, well, we're not going to do we're not the one spotting. So we'll let Keith keep going. And then after he got repositioned, he was on the line that Nick and I were talking about.
Yeah.
And then he was able to get right up it. I think he had to winch because he didn't have lockers in the front or something.
Most of the rigs got up it without winching. I think there was only 3 out of the 10 of us. I think that needed that extra weight on their front end to get them over the ledge.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even that much. It was they sucked down and it put the weight down, and then they crawled up.
Exactly.
You know, so.
And so I ended up taking that line that I wanted as I was coming up. I told Keith, I said, I want the line that he came up on. And he goes, oh, the line that we had him on originally? I said, no, the line that he made it up the wall. I want that line. He goes, okay. And so I came right up, walked right up and over the rocks, and then lined up on the wall. And then he goes, all right, you're on the wall. Go for it. And so I just kind of gave it a little bit of bump, a little bit of wheel spin, and it pretty much popped right up. Nice. I was expecting to sit there and have to like heat up the tires a little bit or give it more of a bump. And I just kind of was like, I'm going to try a little baby wheel spin and see what happens. And it just walked right up. Yeah. I was really impressed. But yeah, walked right up that, and then went over into the gulch because I wanted to play in the gulch. And I went in between the ledge. I'm narrow enough where I went between the ledge and the big rock on the passenger side, which was a mistake.
Yeah.
Because it put me too far driver's side. And as I was trying to climb the wall out of the gulch, I was trying to pivot my Forerunner and go around, and my tire was too much under the undercut, and I couldn't get through there. And so I ended up having to kind of back up and reposition myself to get over more passenger. And in doing so, backing up with all my weight on my rear end, stuffing my tire because I had to get over on top of that rock over there, which then my bumper is getting caught on stuff as well.
Your shackles were too.
It was my shackles getting caught. So there was just a bunch of stuff getting hung up on the rocks on the passenger side that I now had to be on top of. But I had to be backing up to reposition. So I was in the right position to get up the wall at the end. And I was sitting there trying to crawl it. It wasn't working.
Yeah, we were like, because I remember you were talking to me, right? I'm like, you should be coming up.
Yeah.
Like try going driver, you know, and nope. Try going now. Okay. Like back up a hair and try going passenger. Let's get you over there. Nope. Didn't work. You know, and I was like, you're just in a hole.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. You have bigger tires than I do.
Yeah.
You're not quite as long. So maybe that helped out, but I don't know. And then, what was his Chuck?
Charlie. Yeah.
I was like, just give it a little goose.
You just need a little goose. That's all you need. And I was like, okay. So I tried once with the goose.
Yeah. You looked at me and I was like, do what you want, man.
Yeah. And so I tried a little bit of goose because at that point I was stuck on my rear bumper or shackle or something. And I couldn't get off of it. And so I was like, well, let's try a little goose to get off of it and I'll just stay in it to get up the wall and see how that feels.
Yeah.
And I did it once and it felt fine. But I felt like I could have gone harder. But it did feel like had made progress up the wall. And if I did just a little bit more, I'd make it.
Yeah.
So I backed up and got position and then dropped it into, I think I was in low third gear.
Okay.
And then dropped the clutch and there was a loud ping. And then I moved forward and then there was another loud ping. And then there was a lot of tire rubbing on my fenders. And I was like, that didn't sound good.
Yep.
And then that's when you're like, oh, there goes your leaf springs. So what happened to my leaf springs, Jimmy?
You sheared all 4 of your leaf springs at the center pin.
The entire leaf pack.
The entire leaf pack sheared at the center pin.
Yep.
Never ever have I ever
do that, right? Never seen that happen before. I've seen people crack, main leaves or maybe a couple of supporter leaves. Something.
I've broken a supporter leaf and just had it dangling around for like a year.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
but never have I seen all 4 leaves shear off, break straight down to make 2/4 leaves.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what we should do. We should make it a 3/4 elliptical.
It could have done that. Yeah. Yeah, it was impressive. And so I'm like, well, all right, let's get out and do damage assessment. And so when you said I had broke the leaf springs, I was like, okay, let's just winch me out of here now and get me up here and we'll take the leaf spring pack off, weld it together, and we'll see if it holds to get off the trail. This was the last major obstacle. There's nothing hard after
this
here.
This is the very end of Golden Spike. We're just about to go on to Gold Bar Rim. And Gold Bar Rim is like a level 3.
Yeah, it's a
base. There's a few
really
climbs, nothing hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let's winch me out of here. And you're like, no, you're not winching anywhere.
You're not going anywhere.
And I was like, what do you mean I'm not going anywhere? You're like, your leaf springs are sheared. They're gone. And I was like, well, yeah, but they're still like holding me to the vehicle, right? And you're like, no, they're not. And I was like, oh, that's a big problem.
Yeah. I looked under your vehicle and all I saw was the front half of your leaf springs lean down against the ground.
Yep.
You know, like not even connecting you.
No.
All your vehicle was fallen and sitting in your wheel well. And your tire was holding your body up.
My tire literally was holding the vehicle up. I had no suspension anymore.
Yeah.
And so we're like, all right, let's look into some damage assessment and get out and see how we're going to fix this. So getting out and looking at it, when they snapped, the pinion on my third member ripped into my gas tank too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I still don't know how. I've taken a close look at the gas tank now. I don't know how it didn't rip a hole in the gas tank.
We are so lucky that didn't happen.
Yeah. That would have been bigger. I think that would have been a bigger issue than shearing the leaf springs.
Well, we could have got you gas, but I don't know if you wouldn't have been able to hold gas. We would have to pull a dead vehicle out.
Yeah.
Fix leaf springs and pull a dead vehicle out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're so lucky that didn't happen, or it didn't crack it, or whatever. It just scarred it, mangled it, dented it, because your pinion. So pretty much what happened is, it seems like hindsight, right? Your major hindsight is, after looking at the leaf springs that had been broken, they were already somewhat cracked.
Yeah, there was 2 of the 4 leaf springs. The 2 in the center of the pack had major rust on the brake where it broke. But not all the way through. So like it had cracked on the top or in between them, maybe all the way through,
but the outsides weren't cracked. The main leaf wasn't cracked, and I don't think the bottom leaf was cracked.
No, it didn't seem like it. Yeah, there was no rust on those.
And so what happened is, when you low third gear throttled it, you axle wrapped yourself so much that it it sheared those leaf springs off, and it threw your pinion straight up into the air and into your gas tank.
I agree. I think that's what happened as well.
Yeah. And now looking back on photos, there's pictures of you in the crack.
In the golden crack.
In the golden crack with your pinion straight up in the air.
Pretty much, yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I want to go back even farther to when we had talked about Gooneyberg Rock.
Yep.
And your leaf springs were bowing down. And we're like, wow, they're kind of worn out. Those springs are worn out already? That's crazy. Well, that right there was showing us that your springs are done.
Yep.
Also, I want to go a little bit
a little further back.
Okay.
Keep going.
To Moab Rim. When things were possibly unloading on you. And you might have had a softer suspension on that side and it wanting to kind of unload or compress, you were having different flexes on your different leaves, and it was really throwing your off camber issues into that trail.
Yep. I agree. I think that a lot of my problems this year at Moab were because that leaf pack was already broken. But since it was the center leaves and it broke from the center at the center pin working its way outwards.
Right.
The only way to tell if they were broken was to take the leaf pack off and take it apart.
Take it apart, right.
Yeah.
There's no evidence otherwise that there was an issue besides the fact that your springs were worn because they were bowing down, which isn't a sign of them broken. It's just a sign of the springs were worn out.
Yeah. Yep.
Which I don't know how many years I've wheeled on springs that do that.
Right.
And haven't had an issue for the most part.
Yeah.
So we were pretty dead in the water. There was a few things that needed to be attended to. We needed to get you out of the spot you were in, kind of get you up to level ground to do some work. If we were going to do any work, we needed to rotate your axle.
Yep.
For the most part, we needed to take the weight off of your vehicle, off of the body, off of the axle to be able to do those things. And you were in a very odd spot.
It was a very odd, precarious, dangerous spot to work under the vehicle on.
All the weight's on the back. Right. And then we try to lift it up, and now you're adjusting the weight and the location. So yeah, it was very bizarre.
Yeah. So the first thing, like you said, we needed to attend to was we need to get the rig out of that position. So I'm thinking, well, we need something for a suspension. We need something to hold the body away from the axle. And I was like, well, we can use a big spacer. What do we have for logs around us?
Yep.
And let's just shove a log in there and ratchet strap it to the frame and the axle and be a spacer, and I'll just have no suspension, but a spacer suspension only on that rear passenger corner, and we'll just winch myself out of here nice and carefully and hope that it all holds, and then we'll just take it really, really easy out of here through Gold Bar Rim. And so we're like, all right, so we need to get the leaf pack off in order to start any of this.
Right.
And the problem with that is because the tire had kind of jammed up on a rock as we were going forward. So it compressed the rear side of the leaf springs, which was still connected to the center pin and the axle. It had compressed all of that together to the shackle, right? And the front half of the leaf springs were loose and free, fall on the floor kind of thing. So taking that part off was easy. We just took the bolt out and, hey, we got 4 pieces of leaf springs.
Yep.
But the rear was interesting because it was under compression. And so we're like, okay, what's going to happen to the vehicle as we loosen up the U-bolts and release the stress under compression that the leaf springs are under? Is the vehicle going to shift? If it shifts, is it going to fall because there's nothing on this side? What's going to happen? So we're like, all right, we need to first stabilize the vehicle and make sure no matter what we do to it, it's not going anywhere. So how did we do that?
Well, we winched you. We had a vehicle. You winched up to Norm. Norm was up in front of you, and you set your winch
big
up
old
that
heavy
way.
FJ Cruiser.
FJ Cruiser up there. And then we put a high lift. Well, first we tried a Pro Eagle. Nick had a Pro Eagle.
Yep.
And then we put a high lift jack on your bumper. And that was pretty much what lifted the vehicle. Was there anything else? You stacked rocks around the wheel.
We stacked rocks around the wheel to kind of keep the wheel from moving when we unloaded the U-bolts. And in hindsight, we should have just taken the tire off immediately, the wheel and tire off immediately. But we weren't thinking that far. And so we stacked rocks around the tire to keep it from that side of the axle from moving. We put the high lift on the rear bumper to jack up the whole rear end of the vehicle. So like the driver's side tire was also off the ground because we needed space.
You needed to undo the compression of the springs.
Yeah.
Both, for the most part, one side, but the one side that you really needed it uncompressed was the high side.
Yeah.
Right. So so when you lifted the vehicle, you had to lift the passenger side tire so high, or the driver tire that was down in the hole that was uncompressed. You needed to lift the vehicle high enough to uncompress the compressed side. So yeah, both tires were off the ground.
Yep. So once we figured out that both tires were off the ground, we're like, okay, the vehicle's being held on its front tires and the winch is keeping it from rolling backwards on everybody. And then the high lift in the back is holding the rear end up. I was like, I want more stabilization here.
Yeah.
So Lee got his little bottle jack and put it under the corner of the bumper on a big ass rock that was right there to stabilize that corner from falling down, because that's where all the weight, that's how the vehicle was angled.
Right.
And then we put another high lift on my driver's side slider just to keep the vehicle from unloading going that direction anyway. And then we used the Pro Eagle to control the axle.
Correct.
The elevation of the axle. And so once we had all that set up,
during that time, I went out and I found a piece of wood.
Yeah. Yep. You went out, found a good piece of wood that we can use as a spacer. And so we're sitting there and we're just slowly, because I never cut my U-bolts, trimmed them down and they were dirty. And so it took a long time to get the nuts off of the U-bolts, and we were going really slow as well, waiting to see if the vehicle was going to shift or how things were going.
Yeah, well, and anytime you are putting a physical strain of pulling the U-bolt to try to break it loose, the vehicle is rocking,
shifting
back and
moving
forth
around. Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of times that people are like, I wouldn't put my arm in there, or I wouldn't do, you know, like, if the vehicle does come down, that's going to compress, and that's where you are at. You know, it's like, so a lot of there was a lot of safety checking going on to try and figure out, like, okay, well, if there is an issue, how do we, like, where do I need to be, you know, if there is a problem. So.
And it was really nice having that many people around, because they could see, everybody had a different angle, a different view, and they could see if something was happening and then call an all stop.
Yeah.
Or just, hey, everybody clear the vehicle. Like, something bad's happening, clear the vehicle. I think that only happened once, maybe twice. And it was mainly when we had everything loose enough that I went under the vehicle to start using the 1/2-inch impact gun. And when I was going under the vehicle and using that, that was dicey.
Yeah.
Getting some bolts off under there. And it got to the point where I was like, I could just feel the vehicle kind of moving around me, and I just stopped everything I was doing really quick, and it was really, really quiet. Like, everybody else was super quiet too.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that means something's going on. And somebody goes, it's moving around quite a bit. And I was like, I know. Does it look like it's moving around, that anything's coming loose? Are all the high lifts in good position? And everybody said yes. I was like, okay, I'm going to continue. So we continued doing that. And then we're like, okay, now we need to take the tire off, the wheel off, so that we can put this log in to use as a spacer. And right about that time in doing that, you came up with a great idea. What was your idea?
Well, I figured to get your vehicle out of there, one of the easiest ways to do that would be to actually remove my leaf spring off of my truck, because we have the same exact rear leafs.
We do. We have the same leaf packs in the rear. Same
leaf packs. What are they? They're Pro Comp 4-inch Chevy 63s, right? And so I was like, well, why don't I go? It's not hard to remove a leaf pack, especially if your vehicle's on flat ground.
Yeah.
Why don't I remove my leaf pack and we'll just put my leaf pack underneath your rig to get you out of the hole you're at, to get you out to flat ground, so then we could figure out how to solve the next problem.
I remember how we got to that point, because we got my leaves out, and we were like, well, what if we just weld them here and then put the leaf pack back under my rig with a welded leaf pack?
Yeah.
And we kind of came up with a strategy to weld the leaf pack But then I realized that in order to turn on my engine and weld, I had to take it out of gear. And I was like, I don't want the vehicle to move. Because right now the front tires, the front, I don't have an e-brake on the front, and the rear driver tire is off the ground. And so the only thing keeping me, I mean, there was the winch and other stuff keeping me from moving, but I didn't want to shift any of the jacks. And so I was like, we can't start the vehicle to weld the leaf springs together. So we need something else to get me out of the hole so that I can get up to level ground and we can weld on stuff and start the fixing process.
Right.
And that's when you were like, well, we have the same leaf packs. Let's just take one of mine off and put it under your rig.
Yeah. And it was funny because I remember Keith was like, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. He's like, and we're like, we know each other.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, oh, you guys know each other. And we're like, yeah, we're friends, and we've been wheeling all the trails together. We've known each other for a while, He's like, oh, okay, well then, yeah, whatever you guys want to do, And I was kind of like, how did you, like, I understood he could, like, he would assume that everybody doesn't really know each other, but you would assume that also people would probably be going with their friends to some extent.
And you and I were both,
especially the rigs that are like super tall, really big tires, and doing all the stupid lines.
And we were both wearing Snail Trail 4x4 t-shirts.
That's true too. Yeah. So,
I don't know.
And you had the Snail Trail 4x4 in your rig.
And I talked to him earlier in the day saying, no, Bobcat will do that line. It's really annoying, the stuff that Bobcat does.
Yeah,
that
so
truck does.
You knew the fact that, So anyway, so I thought it was kind of funny. It was like, I don't know why, but I just thought it was funny that he's like, oh, you guys know each other.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we know each other.
Yeah.
His dad's riding with me.
Yeah. So you went up and started disconnecting your leaf spring. And then I think it was Lee and Nick started prepping my axle to put your leaf spring on, and my shackles and everything. And then I started putting together all the welding stuff, and a bunch of other guys were like, hey, we'll start prepping the leaf springs. There was one guy, the guy with the trepidors, who was like, I'll preheat everything. I'll get everything preheated as much as possible. He had a propane torch with him, which was nice.
Norm pulled out a grinder and he ground down all the leaf spring sides and edges and everything.
Yeah. And so the goal for the leaf springs, I was like, with a cracked leaf spring and then like other supporting leaf springs, you can usually like weld the crack up, right? And you'll be okay to get off the trail. If you have all 4 leaf springs completely destroyed and compromised, like you can't weld the cracks back together because they're just going to snap in half. There's nothing to support them.
Yeah.
And so we were like, well, what if we put the main leaf, because it's the longest one with the bolts on either end,
the eyelets,
we'll put that kind of at the top, but we need something on top of it to help sandwich and kind of keep it together, held together with the other rest of the leaf packs. And then with the 4 leaves in here, we'll weld all 4 leaves on the side of them together. And then we'll kind of like stitch them together. And then if that doesn't hold, we'll also bend some metal around them to kind of clamp and hold the leaf packs together as well. And then that between that and the U-bolts and the plate, it should hold in theory. And so so Norm is, prepping the sides of all the leaf springs. I can't remember that other guy's name with the trepidors. He's preheating all the leaf springs. And so you come over with your leaf spring pack, and we go to put it on the 4Runner, get it going and get it on. And then after that, I'm like, cool. So does that mean I get another attempt at the obstacle now?
Yeah.
And everybody was like, no, you're done. You had your fun. Let's get out of here. So we winched me out. And from the original spot, winching me, it was pulling me over sideways.
Oh, really?
And so we had to get Norm repositioned so that it pulled me up the wall rather than sideways and into that hole where my rear driver got caught.
That makes sense.
All the time. So anyways, winched me out, got off there, got up to the flat spot up near where your truck was parked, where Bobcat was parked. And that's when like the trail from there turned into a full fabrication shop.
Yeah.
It was really, can't say enough about how impressed I am about how much every single person on that trip chipped in.
Oh, absolutely.
It was really cool.
I don't know how many people I've said it to. I said when we started that trip, we had more or less 10 rigs, right? And when we ended that trip, hours later than we should have, we had 10 rigs.
Yep.
There wasn't people complaining. I mean, at least not to anybody that I heard people complaining. Everybody was willing to stay and chip in any way they could. You know, like I had broken a brake line when I was, I stupidly and regrettably routed my brake lines over my leaf springs with thoughts of like, well, now if they're over the leaf springs, they'll never get hurt, you know, when I'm wheeling. But whenever you have to like remove a leaf spring, now they're stupid in the way and it's hard to do. So I was like trying to bend the brake line down so I could just put a leaf back on top. And when doing that, I cracked it right at the fitting on the caliper.
Oh no.
Right. And so I needed a bolt and I was like, hey, I need this specific bolt. Does anybody have it? You know, and like 4 people were like, I have a bunch of bolts, you know, and I'm like, sweet, you know, and so everybody was helping any way they could. And I think a lot of people necessarily didn't know how to help, but as soon as you voiced that you needed something, they were there to help out in any way they could.
I agree.
So
that's a good way to put it. I was the only one on the trip with a welder. There was one guy though, the guy with the trapdoors, had like every tool imaginable. Though he had a welding hood with him too. But I don't think he either knew how to stick weld or he didn't know how to, weld on a leaf spring or something.
Sure.
So he was over there.
Well, we really don't know how to weld on leaf springs, except on the last episode before we went on this trip. We had John on and he talked all about how to weld leaf springs back together.
Yep.
And so it was like, we just got our school lesson before we went and needed to apply it in real life.
I will tell. So John and Renee came over and picked up their trailer. That's whose trailer I was using. They came over and they said that John has had a bunch of people reach out to him on Instagram with welding questions since that episode with him. And another person reached back out to me and said, hey, that was a really cool episode with John. We need more people like that. We need more really knowledgeable people with some good educational information like that out in the off-roading community, sharing that information.
Yeah.
I said, absolutely. John's the reason why I got into welding in the first place, and being able to go wheeling with John, see the things that he does, you learn a lot from the guy just by hanging out with him.
Oh yeah.
And so I have heard multiple stories of him fixing leaf springs and how he did it and what the correct process is for it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, I think I know how to fix them. Whether or not I do it right, we'll see.
Sure.
But I can give it a shot.
Well, we didn't have any missile rod.
We didn't have missile rod, but I do know that 7018 is a high carbon stick rod, and leaf springs are a very, very high carbon spring steel. Spring steel is a very high carbon steel. So you need a high carbon rod to weld to a high carbon steel.
Right.
And missile rod is like the highest carbon rod I believe you can get. That's why you use it on spring steel. But 7018 is still like a close second.
Okay.
So the trick with spring steel is the heating and cooling process with it. Because if you superheat it through welding, but then you just let it cool off and don't dissipate the stress from it, you create tempered steel.
Okay. Yeah.
And so when tempered steel bends, it snaps rather than springing.
Right. It just breaks.
And so you have to go through while the spring, you have to let it have a cool off period. And while it's cooling off, you have to beat the shit out of it every couple of minutes to let that stress relieve from it so it doesn't become tempered.
Got it.
And so that's what we did. And we welded the shit out of it. I burned, I don't know, between 15 and 20 rods welding to it. And then at some point during this whole process, you said, hey, let's just keep the good leaf pack, the one we took off Bobcat. Let's just keep it under the 4Runner, under Kermit, and let's put the broken leaf pack under Bobcat, and I'll just drive out with it. And I was like, fuck you. No, like, I'm not going to make you take my broken shit and deal with it.
Yeah.
And then you were like, no. I weigh it much less than you do. We can pull my rear drive shaft.
Mine's already apart.
Yeah.
Yours is now back together and drivable. So to swap them out again, we'd have to do more work, and it's just, I'm here waiting for a leaf spring. Yeah.
And so I was like, you're really smart. I don't want to make you take my broken shit off of the trail and deal with it, but you are correct. Putting it under Bobcat was the best option, better option, I should say. I know. And so, right. I know. No. So that's what we did. We welded up the leaf spring pack, got it all back together, all holding.
What time did you start welding?
I have no clue. It was before it was dark.
Yeah.
And it was well after dark.
But the plan was to finish all the trails around 5 to 6 p.m. And I think we started welding like at 8 or 9.
You think it was that late?
So if it was dark, it was just before dark, right?
Yeah, just before dark, and sunset was around 8:30. Yeah, okay. So maybe 8 o'clock is when we started welding. I think I broke everything at 6:30.
No, I think it was closer to 5.
I mean, that early? That's true. A lot of the time in this whole thing was just figuring out how to get my rig out of the hole without killing somebody.
There was a lot of time was taken up by undoing your leaf springs.
Yeah, true.
Trying to figure the best way to do that.
Yeah, that is true.
I mean, we probably spent 2 hours to take off your leaf springs, which sounds ridiculous, but because of the angles and the situation that it was in and just safety factor, yeah, that's how long it took.
Yeah.
And after that, everything moved smoothly, but and time appropriately, right? But I think it took a solid. Well, if you if you broke at 5-ish, and it took you 2 hours to get the leaf springs off, and then another hour to get it all back together and drivable out of there.
Yeah.
So that would be
3.5.
Well, so that would be 7-ish, and that would get you to the top in almost time to start welding, which would probably be around 8-ish.
Yeah, to get everything set up.
So yeah,
that's about right. Okay.
I was right once again.
I wonder if we can look at the timestamps on all the images, the pictures.
I'm sure we could.
But anyways, I think it's inconsequential. I think the big thing is that it took us a long time to get the leaf springs off due to the safety factor.
Right.
Once we got me up out of the hole, everything went pretty quickly, pretty smoothly. I would guess I was welding for
welded for
hour and a half straight. But we got it all together. And then while you were still trying to figure out your brake line situation, I was just kind of letting the leaf springs cool off and then beating the shit out of them every once in a while. So what we did then was we took the leaf springs and put them up under Bobcat and put the U-bolts on. And you have double shims, caster correction shims.
So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
The photo of you with your tire off, hanging, with the Pro Eagle underneath, the jacket behind it, or the high lift behind it, 7:40.
Was that 7:40 p.m.? So we weren't even up out of there yet. Jeez. No. So my guess is I didn't start welding until 9? 9:30?
Let's see. I got another photo here of pretty much right after you broke, and it was at 6:16.
Okay. So it took us, about 2 hours to figure out how to get me moving again and get everything undone and start me winching up out of there.
Too crazy.
Yeah. So anyways, I welded for a very long time, burned about 15 to 20 rods. And then we took the leaf spring, put it under Bobcat. You're running double shims for a pinion angle correction.
Yep.
And so we didn't put the shims back in on the broken leaf springs, so we figured they would just spit them out.
Right.
Because we didn't have a centering pin.
Nothing holding them in place.
Yeah, we didn't put a centering pin back in. And
could have welded them on.
That's what we're, in hindsight, there's a couple of different things we could have done for the problem that's about to hit us.
Yeah.
And so we just torqued down the U-bolts and put the leaf spring on Bobcat, put the weight back down on the spring, and realized that we put the springs in the wrong order.
Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
We not necessarily the wrong order, but what was the issue was that you guys were trying to sandwich a big spring between the main leaf between another spring, and you had put the next longest spring on the top.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, yeah, okay. So you should have put the one that was underneath the main spring on the top, and then put the next main spring underneath. I mean, yeah. So unfortunately, it was sort of backwards.
Essentially, we were trying to get.
You were trying to sandwich.
I was trying to sandwich the main leaf.
Yeah.
And then support the crack there. And it just like, we didn't even think about having that one next longer leaf was long enough to actually be a supporting leaf. Like that thought hadn't even occurred to us.
No.
We were just using it as a sandwiching leaf. And so we put everything up under Bobcat, put the pressure down, and we were like, oh, that leaf is actually long enough to be a supporting leaf, but because it's on top of the main leaf, it ain't doing shit.
Nope. It was actually hitting my frame on the front.
Oh, it was? I missed that.
Because the main leaf had flexed down, but the leaf that was on top of the main leaf was still arced. Yeah. And it was hitting my frame.
Gotcha. So I missed that part.
To some extent, it was stopping the vehicle from dropping more because of the weight of that spring.
So
the way it was hitting my frame.
Once we realized that that it could be a supporting leaf, we adopted a new idea to try and connect the supporting leaf to the main leaf so that the main leaf isn't taking all the stress of the vehicle with the crack in the middle. And so what did we do?
Just like any redneck would do.
Yep.
Duct tape, baling wire, and zip ties.
Yep. 120-pound tensile strength zip ties.
I think there was like 10 on each side.
Yeah, something like that. It was a lot.
Yeah. Baling wire all the way around everything.
Gorilla tape.
And then Gorilla tape on top of that. Oh, and there was vice grips.
Yep. Vice grips to hold them in, and the vice grips were zip tied closed so they couldn't pop open.
And then duct taped on.
And then they were duct taped onto the leaves to make sure they didn't go anywhere.
They didn't fall off on the trail because people wanted them back.
Yep.
One of them's mine, and it's still attached to the leaves, and I think I'm going to permanently leave it there, and I'll talk to Corey about trying to get another one.
That's funny.
But I think if it's going to become wall art, which I'm assuming it will, I think having the duct taped vice grip with or locking pliers or whatever they're called, will be a good talking point.
I agree. So anyways, we had all that on there, and we were about to go without the baling wire, and somebody goes, I've got baling, Norm goes, I've got baling wire if you guys want to put some on, and you're sitting under there, you're like, I'll take whatever anybody's got. We almost got it all. We just need some JB weld now.
Yeah.
It was fun.
And then Keith turns to you and goes, how do you feel about your welds since they're just throwing everything else on there?
Yeah, he goes, how does that make you feel about your weld?
And you're like, I don't care as long as it gets us off the trail.
Exactly. Yep. But yeah, so we got it all set up, and everybody was in a surprisingly really good mood. Like everybody was joking around like the entire time.
Yeah.
Nobody was getting frustrated. Everybody was having a good time from what it seemed like. And I think that it speaks wonders about the group we were with and just the atmosphere that everybody was under, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
We got back up and rolling again, and we started heading off to do Gold Bar Rim now.
Yep. At 22:53.
22, so 10:53, 11 p.m. is when we rolled out. So when we started wheeling out. We broke at 6:15, and we started rolling out at 11 p.m.
Midnight. Wait, 22:53, right?
22:53.
Yeah,
so
midnight.
That's 23:53 would be midnight.
Sorry, 10.
So 10.
Almost 11 o'clock.
Yeah, almost 11 o'clock. So 5 hours there.
Yep. 5 hours longer than we had anticipated.
Yeah, for the trip. Yeah. I'm actually impressed that we got what we did. I'm impressed we got that done in 5 hours.
A lot of hands.
A lot of hands. It was really impressive. Again, huge kudos to everybody on that trip. And so, we went off to do Gold Bar Rim with me pretty much in full functioning order.
Yep. You were perfect.
Perfect.
You were better than before when you were better than when you showed up to Moab.
I was, exactly. And then Jimmy with a bum rear axle, no rear drive in front wheel drive.
Well, yeah. So I didn't, not a bum rear axle necessarily. I had 3 brakes out of 4. So I broke the brake line. I tried to build another brake line. It wasn't holding pressure.
Yeah.
Lee and I built we tried to hobble together make a brake line out of my old brake line, and we made it like 1 inch too short.
Oh, that's what that was.
Yeah.
Dang it.
So then I tried to do the Speedway Motorsports one, and the thread pitch at the T on the axle housing was incorrect.
Oh.
And so every
Speedway
time
Motors kit?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
To the T.
Yeah.
So every time I pressed on the brakes, it would leak out slowly. And so our thought was, instead of leaking and possibly letting air in, just eliminate it completely.
Just cap it off and use 3 brakes.
Yep. So 3 brakes. So for those out there that if you ever have this problem, a drive shaft bolt fits perfectly into that T. It's the correct size and thread pitch.
Interesting.
And since I already had my drive shaft out, I already had a bolt available. And so I thought it was like an M8, but it's much larger than that.
That's like an M10 by 150 thread?
I think it's 10. No, it's 150. It's fine thread.
Yeah, fine thread.
So plugged it with a drive shaft bolt. So I had 3 brakes, no drive shaft. To the rear. And a bum leaf spring.
Yep. What a pal.
Yeah.
What a buddy.
So I now was the trail tampon and was slowing everybody down, but I was doing my best not to compress the springs. I was in 4 low first gear for pretty much the whole rest of the way out. And you were in front of me, and you were looking for lines that kept the vehicle as flat as possible.
Yep.
Or even drops.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. I was looking for stuff. If there was a drop, how do we get you down to bring both rear tires off at the same time, and keep the vehicle as even as possible so you're not articulating at all?
Correct.
And so that worked out pretty damn well for the first 1,000 feet.
You're right. Until I needed to get pulled up something.
That's right. There was a little ledge
there that I needed to get strapped up. It worked. I was driving out fine until that ledge, and then I got yanked up something, and then I got to the top, and then I'm not quite sure what happened, but the axle shifted forwards somehow. And I think it was just because the passenger side still had the 2 shims in there to correct my pinion angle.
I think so too.
And the other side didn't, so it just kind of twisted itself forward and moved the axle forward. So then we needed to figure out a way to get my axle centered again back.
Because we didn't have a centering pin.
Correct.
Yep.
So we loosened the U-bolts again. And actually they were pretty loose already. It had loosened itself when it moved.
Yep.
So we had loosened those up. We strapped an Lee. Was it Lee behind me? Lee wrapped his winch around my axle.
Yep.
And pulled it backwards. Yep. I stayed on the brakes.
Got it back centered in the wheel well.
Centered, and then Lee pulled out like a really thick, big ratchet strap.
It's like one of those 3,000-pound ratchet straps that Ian from Wheel Every Weekend had talked about. Oh, I forgot to say. One of the tips that Ian gave us in that episode, I ended up using.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and it was, you can take a 7018 or whatever rod you're using, you can knock all the flux off of it and use that as a filler.
Yes.
And so I did that a couple times. I took a full rod, knocked all the flux off of it, and then bent it down to be a leaf spring width. So it's like doubled over itself like 4 times, shoved that down into the crack between the leaf springs, and then welded over it to help fill in the cracks and leaf springs.
Yeah.
So I thought I was like, thank you, Ian, as I was doing it. Because I was like, I need filler metal. We need to try and fix this, but it's too far to gap it with stick rod.
Yeah.
If I was MIGging, I might be able to do it with gas, but, and I was like, I have a shit ton of rod here. Let's just knock the flux off and use it.
That was perfect.
So anyways, used that trick from Ian. And then Lee had like a 3,000-pound ratchet strap. And so we're like, well, let's get Jimmy some links. Let's link the rear end of Bobcat real quick.
Somewhat, yeah. So we strapped, connected it to like my bumper, and then went down and around the axle 3 times, and then up towards a cross member by my muffler.
Yep.
And then we zip tied the hooks on to make sure that they didn't fall off if there was ever a compression that might have loosened it. And that did the trick.
I was very impressed with how well that held the rest of the time.
Yeah, the U-bolts still came loose
a
few times. We checked them a few more times down the trail. and they were loose, but not like extremely loose. Loose enough that you could tighten it again.
Okay.
But yeah, the axle stayed in place.
That's cool.
Yeah, which was pretty rad.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we rest of the way out was pretty smooth, slow, and very smooth because I was going so slow, and fairly uneventful. Since it was midnight or 11 o'clock ish, that Keith didn't have the use of a daylight to to guide his way. So there's a few times when he was like, I'm not sure if I'm going the right way.
Yeah, hang back for a second. Let me check something.
Yeah. And you, Tyler and Lee were running Gaia or something, and you guys had the map in front of you, and you're like, no, you're on the trail. Keep going.
Yeah. Take it right up here. He goes, I don't know if we're going right or left, or if there's a trail to the left. I know there's a split here somewhere, but I don't know if this is it. And I was like, no, we're not out of it yet. Keep going.
Yeah.
Go right.
There was one or two other spots that I really needed a tug up. Otherwise, I drove out the rest of the trail and just front wheel drive. And then, when we got back to the flat spot outside of Gooneyburg, I radioed ahead. I wanted to try to let everybody go. Like, hey, it's flat from here on out.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good. If worst case scenario, we bring the truck and the trailer
into here, yeah,
and we could get it.
Yeah.
And Keith was like, no, we're almost done. Let's just keep everybody together. And I was kind of like,
all right,
you guys could get out of here early.
Yeah, like, we've already held you guys back long enough.
I touched Gooneyburg's feet on the way out.
I did too.
Yep. And I got back to we had called Dave from Delta Dave and said, hey, hook up Jimmy's truck and trailer and bring it to this area. We're going to need it.
Yep.
And Dave goes to bed at 8:30 or 9 normally. And he came out at midnight. And dropped off the truck and trailer, and I drove right up. I pulled the ramps out and drove right up onto the trailer. And
I was really impressed for how much of a broken parts were now on Bobcat, how compromised, quote unquote, Bobcat was compared to his normal glory. How well that all worked out getting out.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to show, you could cut half a Bobcat off and still great wheeling.
That's great, right? Yeah.
But I mean, it was also, we were doing absolutely every easy line there was. Right at that point. It was we're not here to do I didn't want to flex the rig at all.
Yeah.
There was not nope, I'm not even sorry, everybody, I'm going slow. But the goal is no longer to have fun and get out of here at a reasonable time, because that's way out the window. Yeah. The goal is now to make it out of here without having another break.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I think we got up to 15 miles an hour in that wash.
Yeah.
When I passed you.
Yeah, that's right. That was funny. Yeah.
So, but we knew that flat spot was there, and it's smooth and not bumpy at all. So, yeah. So that was, it was fun. I mean, it was a hell of a day.
Yep.
I think we got home. Well, then we were emailing Dimitri, telling him that he still needed to get us pizza.
That's right. We're like, hey, could you get a pizza, have it delivered to the house?
He left at noonish, like we had said early in the episode, and it was his night for dinner.
Yep.
So he was like, I'll get you guys pizza or something.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, we don't need it anytime soon.
Nope. And
then when we were on our way home at 1 a.m., we're like, we need pizza.
Hey, you want to get us some food?
Yeah. We're so late that the Mexican restaurant that closes at midnight wasn't open. So I don't know. Was there anything else to
that's
say
pretty
about
much
that night?
The trip. I mean, we got down, everybody aired up and took off.
Yeah.
And so it was an extra.
Norm blew his hose.
Norm blew his compressor hose, so he got to use a Morphlate.
Has he since ordered one?
I don't know. I need to check that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was a good time. I feel bad about making the trip last an extra 6 hours, but everything was feeling great on Kermit until it wasn't.
Right.
And so, yeah. I don't know.
And I've said it to people, and probably you as well, but I was very shocked about how everybody was willing to stay.
Yeah.
Everybody was willing to stay. Everybody was willing to help out. Everybody.
Keith gave everybody the option. He said, hey, there's
he went
other
around
trails.
Individually, and he was talking to people.
Okay.
Making sure everybody was okay. And everybody, I believe, for the most part, chose to stay.
Yep.
Plus he was in contact with Cruise Moab and they asked if somebody else needs to come out. And he said, no, I think we're going to be good.
Yep.
You know, and so
they were willing to send somebody else out to get anybody out that wanted to leave.
And I think everybody, to my knowledge, nobody said that they wanted to leave.
Yeah.
Everybody said, no, we're here. We're going to figure this out. We're going to solve this problem.
Which is in stark contrast to last year.
Yeah.
Where we got left at Hell's Gate.
Yeah. Hell's Gate, we got left.
Yep.
Tyler, you know, we had talked about it. He flopped the rig in Hell's Gate, and our tour guides were like, "See ya."
Yep. Took the whole group. Everybody left. They left us with the tail gunner. He stuck around with us, but the whole group took off.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, I didn't even realize the tail gunner stayed with us.
No, I didn't. Either.
I looked up at some point and I was like, they literally just all left us here and didn't say anything.
Right. Yeah.
And then the tail gunner was like, hey, you guys good? And I was like, who are you?
Oh, you're still here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to know, because I don't know the rest of this story. So we got home and we had sat around and had a little bit of food and we talked about what the heck we were going to do. Because our goal, we got home at 2:30.
Yep.
And the goal was to wake up at 4 and leave to start driving home. Right. And I'm like, on the drive from the Gooneyburg parking lot area to the house, I was like, you know, I could just keep driving. I could load up right now and I could probably keep driving. And then about halfway back, going through town, I'm like, you know, I'm kind of tired.
Right.
I could probably drive, but I don't know how far I would get.
Yeah.
Before I would be like, I need to stop and take a nap.
Yeah.
And so we got back and I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to go to sleep until I wake up. And sort of my game plan is to try to leave at 9 to 10. But you and the assistant or the secretary, you guys chose to pack up and leave.
Yeah.
And so how did that go?
Not well.
No?
No. I don't know. It went as well as it could have. Well, she's interesting. When she makes up her mind about something, her mind is made up about it.
Sure.
And there's nothing I can say or do to change it. So as soon as she said, I want to pack up and leave tonight, I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
God damn it. All right. I was like, hey, I can't drive. I'm in no shape to drive right now. Tow a trailer out of here. I was like, if we go, you're going to have to drive and you're going to take the first leg and I'm going to have to sleep. Once I wake up, then I can take over and finish off the day. And she goes, that's fine. She goes, I'm not going to be able to go back to sleep anyways. So if we stay here tonight, I'm just going to be awake until we leave. So might as well get on the road and start going somewhere.
Sure.
And I was like, if that's what you want to do, and I trust you to be safe and that you will pull over if you need to, because I'm going to be passed out.
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, she would do that. And I was like, all right, let's pack up and get out of here.
Yeah.
So
you guys left about 3?
It was between 3:30 and 4.
Okay.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
I think I helped you guys load up a little bit and then I'm like, I'm going to bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I did packing so that in the morning I just had to throw stuff in.
So we took off and we got I went to sleep as soon as we got on the main highway in Moab. I was out. And then I woke up at a truck stop about halfway between Moab and Salt Lake City.
Okay.
And so I was like, I woke up and she was asleep in the driver's seat and I'm asleep in the passenger seat. I was like, hey, and I woke her up. I was like, is everything okay? She goes, yeah, I had to pull over because I was starting to see things and hallucinate. And I was like, oh, I'm glad you pulled over.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah.
That you did what we asked.
And so I was like, she goes, are you well enough to drive? I was like, no, I've only had an hour and a half maybe of sleep. I was like, I'm delirious right now. And so I took a bunch of stuff out and threw it in the bed of the F-150 and laid down in the back seat area of the F-150 and slept while she drove another up to Salt Lake City.
Okay.
Once we got to Salt Lake City, we got some coffee, we got some breakfast. And then I was like, okay, I think I'm okay to drive for a little bit. But I could still use maybe a couple more hours of sleep. And she goes, I'm re-energized. I've got coffee. I've got food. Let's just keep going. And I was like, okay. So she drove another 2 hours. So past Salt Lake. So she ended up driving about half of the time And then I took over once I was fully rested. I can't sleep in a car.
No.
At all. And I can't get any meaningful sleep. I can fall asleep, but I'm not going to get any re-energized sleep, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so after about 6-7 hours, I was like, all right, I'll take over. And then I drove the rest of the way home. But like we had to stop. I think we stopped 4 times to take naps.
Wow.
And like each time we kind of stopped, we took half an hour to an hour nap each time. And so by the time we got to Reno, you were about 3 to 4 hours behind me, even though you started.
We left at 11.
So you started about 8 hours after me. You had caught up to within about 3 to 4 hours of me.
Yeah, I was ready to go at like 9:30.
Mm-hmm.
And then we helped Dave and everybody clean up and get out of the house. And, then they had a bunch of packing to do. And so and then I just made sure the houses were good, and then, we all left just before 11 o'clock.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, very uneventful coming home. We just took naps throughout the time coming home.
Okay.
But made it home about 8 p.m., 8 p.m., something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
No, it was long, 8 to 9 p.m., somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I made it home about 2:30.
Oh, you were that late?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I thought you were around midnight sometime.
No.
Okay.
I don't know why. I mean, when we had mapped it, like you were out just about in Reno and we were 4 hours behind you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not quite sure what took me so much longer to get through, but Lee was smarter than me. He pulled off, just outside of Sparks.
Okay.
And took a nap, or went to bed, got a camping spot. And then I was like, I'm going all the way. I got it in my head, and at some point at Reno, I was like, okay, I kind of was like, no more caffeine. Cause once I get home,
you need to go to sleep.
I need to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And that was sort of a silly move. I was just tired. There was time. Like I was just at that point, at that time of night, I was like, I can drive anywhere in the freeway. Yeah. It doesn't really matter. So I was just like taking lanes and going wide, and every once in a while a car would come up on me and I'd hold over on the side and then, go. But I could tell like I was driving, not recklessly, but I was not driving smart, and, but yeah, I made it.
Yeah.
And I think there was what I found that keeps me up is eating. Like snacking on sunflower seeds. I had some popcorn, so I was just munching on popcorn.
Okay.
Popcorn kept me awake. And maybe I shouldn't admit this, but dancing. Like just moving and raises raises your heart level or something instead of sitting there and driving. So I just turned on the radio and just sort of danced in my seat, know?
Yeah.
And just moving around and, and it just kept me awake. And so those are the two things. But actually eating the popcorn kept me awake more than dancing.
Gotcha.
So, or maybe the dancing was keeping me awake, but then I wasn't driving very straight. One or the other. So I didn't get home until about 2 to 2:30, somewhere around there.
Gotcha. So that's our full trip at Moab and how we ended the trip with a bang.
Yeah, with a big bang.
With a big bang. What were your takeaways from the trip?
I saw Kurt Williams again.
Did you?
Yeah.
When?
And so when we were leaving Moab and we were on the drive out towards Salt Lake City, there was just, somewhere in the middle of there's just this big hill, like in the valley, and we get up to the top of the hill and we drive by and there's 3 Land Cruisers on the side of the road. And I was cruising with Lee on the way back also. And I was like, Lee, should we stop and check on them? He's like, yeah, I'll pull over and check. And like just ahead of me was like this little rest stop. And I was like, cool, I'll just come up to here to the rest stop. You let me know if you need anything. And he spun himself around and he gets on the radio. He's like, hey, it's Kurt. I'm like, what? I'm coming back. So you turned on the freeway, drove down, then you turned into the parking area that they were in. And, he said he was just going too faster than his little, whatever he had, like a BJ something, whatever he had, likes to go.
His fancy import.
And he would hit the hill faster than he should have. And his temperature gauge was getting hot. And so they were just pulled over to let it cool down. And he's like, yeah, we're all good. And then so he's like, let me see the leaf spring. So we went back and talked about the leaf spring for a little bit. And then we drove on and he's like, you guys should go in front of us. I'm like, we're only going like 65. And he's like, yeah, that's about as fast as I can go. You guys should go ahead of us. So then we jumped on the freeway and went on, and then it rained on us before we got to Salt Lake City. And we pulled over, and I had some stuff in the bed of my truck that I moved into the cab. Lee had some stuff on his roof rack that he moved into his cab. I had stuff in the bed of Bobcat that I moved into the cab of Bobcat, and then they passed us then, and then we pulled on right afterwards and cruised the rest of the way. Yeah.
Nice.
So
you got to say bye to Kurt.
I said bye to Kurt. Yeah.
Nice.
So he was like, oh, guys, hey, thanks for stopping. You know, his jovial self. You know, we're like, hey, we saw Land Cruiser. We saw a Jeep earlier. We didn't stop for that, but we saw a bunch of Land Cruisers, you know?
Yeah. Nice. So what are your takeaways from the trip? Anything that you're taking away from it as either a lesson or something you realized, or just it was a really fun trip or a really terrible trip?
It was a great trip. I mean, it was a fun trip. We did some great trails. Kind of wish we could have done Pritchett still, but maybe next year when you have a good set of leaf springs or whatever you got going in the rear by that time.
Yeah.
I thought it was fine. And I think we were well enough prepared for the most part that we solved all the problems we ever had. You know, so we were fairly self-sufficient, and then help from some others was nice. In regards to podcasting and YouTube and everything else that we do, I think I would not wheel 3 guided tours next time, because I'm still planning on going back again. But I'm probably not gonna. I'll probably wheel maybe the first day and the last day, and have the middle day as like trying to do work or trying to get a video or trying to do more podcast recordings, or you know, because there was a lot of times that I felt like, oh, we could interview these people, but we don't have the time.
We never had the time. Yeah.
And because we're always out wheeling, which is why we were there in the first place. Now that I've been to Moab 3 times, and I've done a fair amount of trails, I feel like, I mean, there's always more trails to do, but I don't feel like I need to go on these trails. Like I've done Metal Matcher twice. I've done Top of the World 3 or 4 times. You know, I've done I've done some of the trails multiple times now, you know, and so I feel like if somebody's like, I'm going to go to the Top of the World, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to go do fins and things and shoot a video, you know, or something. You know, or make a purpose instead of just going out there. Granted, I've got Instagram content for days, but you know, I think that for me, there's another level of work that I need to accomplish during that.
Gotcha.
So,
it's busy. You know, we're out there.
That or I need to take Monday off.
Yeah, I'm going to get out there a couple days earlier, something like that.
No, I mean on the way home.
On the way home, yeah.
Like don't finish a day, right, and expect to pack up and be out of there the next morning.
Yeah.
But take the next day, have it be a lazy day, have it go into the town and have coffee and, you know, walk around the town and explore the town a little bit, and then, you know, leave late that night or leave early the next morning, but have a day in there as a buffer. Yeah. Maybe a buffer day in general would be a good thing to have.
I would like to do it not all in one day, the drive. I want to split the drive up into multiple days. I'm down for that. So that was one of my big takeaways. Another big takeaway for me is I'm done with my ARBs, my lockers.
Really?
Yeah, I'm done with them.
Okay.
For some reason, my ARB lockers, I've talked about this in the past, but they spew gear oil out of the solenoids every time you release the pressure of the locker, right? Yeah. So during the vent, it spews gear oil up the line and out the solenoids.
Right.
And if it doesn't fully clear the gear oil out of the line, then it doesn't re-engage the locker until I drain the line.
Oh, interesting.
And so, I don't know what it is. I've rebuilt the housing seals on the ARBs multiple times myself. I've rebuilt the bulkhead fittings multiple times myself. I had
maybe that's the problem.
I had River City differentials. That's what I thought. I was like, maybe I'm fucking it up. Maybe I'm doing this wrong. I don't know. Yeah. And then I was like, you know, I'm gonna have River City differentials. Do it.
And you're still having the same problem.
Having the same issue. And in theory, if the seal on the carrier housing, the housing for the carrier, is sealed properly, then, and the bulkhead is sealed properly, there's no reason gear oil should be getting in the airline.
Right.
No reason.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I don't understand why gear oil keeps getting in it, but I can't stop it from happening. And because I constantly had my third member drenched in gear oil because my solenoids are located above my rear axle, I had people asking me like, oh, your third member's leaking, or you're leaking out of your breather or something. I was like, no, it's my ARBs. I found 3 other people on the Moab trip that had the exact same issue with their ARBs.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm like, okay, so this is a, I don't want to say common issue, but it's not isolated to just my vehicle.
Right.
So I'm done with ARBs. Also on that trip, talking with Dimitri, he said Eaton had released an e-locker for the 10.5-inch Tundra third members.
Yes.
Just within like the past year, 2 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, fuck yeah. So I already had one of my Tundra third members built with the ARB. So I'm having that taken out now. I'm putting in an e-locker in it. So I went and as soon as I got home, like I think I did it on the drive home. I bought 2 e-lockers. So now I have 2 10.5-inch ARBs if anybody wants them for anything.
Yeah.
So I've got 2 e-lockers in my possession. Both of them are actually being built into the third members right now.
Cool.
So my new axles are going to be e-lockers.
Nice.
So that was the big thing that I got out of this. The other big thing I got out of this is just the difference in wheeling. Like last year when we went and we did Top of the World, Hell's Revenge, and Cane Creek, I didn't really feel like I challenged Kermit at all. On this trip, I realized how out of place Kermit is for wheeling in Moab.
Well, you get that recognition. We get that whenever we like driving into the arena, and we are a foot taller than all the other rigs there.
Yep.
You know, and it really makes us look out of place, right? And when we wheel the trails, it's evident why we are out of place.
Yep. I think if you want to really wheel and enjoy Moab, in my opinion, you need to be doing low center gravity builds on your vehicles. Kermit does articulation and high Sierra boulders all day long, really, really, really well the way he's set up. But I'm not taking him back to Moab anymore until I'm wider and lower and can control the unloading of the suspension. So that was another big thing for me. And hopefully I can get all that done this fall. So we'll see about that. The last thing, which is not really a realization, just I was very impressed with, was the Patagonia tires.
Oh, okay.
They did phenomenally out there on slick rock, on that terrain, on that geography. I was very impressed with how they did. I never really felt like I was ever at a loss for traction. There was times when I was like purposefully spinning the tire, like on Golden Steps, to play around and see what I could do with it. But I never felt like the tires were not performing. So I was very impressed with them, and I had them at about 5 to 8 PSI the whole time. Yeah. Somewhere in that range.
I was lower than you.
You were. Yep.
And I don't have beadlocks.
No. So at 5 to 8 PSI, the Patagonias, I never felt like they were ever a part of my problem. I was very confident in how they performed out there. So, that's my takeaways from the trip.
Yeah, I am 100% down for stopping midway or something.
Yeah, next year.
Yeah, or maybe just blast to Salt Lake City or something. I don't know. Or then maybe blast to like Elko on the way home.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. It's the trick is going to be finding a spot to stop at in the middle, because like I don't want to stop and stay at Salt Lake City. Yeah, I want to go halfway. Right.
Well, Salt Lake's 12
hours. Yeah. So like I don't want to go just 3 hours. 4 hours.
A 4 hour jaunt is still a chunk of change, but So
anyways,
I'm down to just pull off on BLM and camp.
Just boondog it.
Yeah. You know, I can bring the rooftop tent on Clifford and just curl up in there for a matter of hours.
Yeah. That's a thing. I don't know. We'll have to look at it next year and see. So
yeah, sure.
If I have the Bronco, then we're taking the Bronco next year.
Ooh.
So
hopefully Samantha will be done by then.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
At this rate, I don't know. I haven't touched it in a while.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, man. Well, cool. That's the end of the end of the recap of Moab. So we're not going to be talking about it anymore. We probably will. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the stories from Moab. Some of the shenanigans, the breaks, the aches, and everything in between.
Yeah.
So it was a fun trip. I'm glad we went and did it. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you guys ever have a chance, I don't know how, but if you guys ever have a chance to go to Cruise Moab, because it sells out in 4 minutes, so good luck.
Right.
I would highly suggest it. It's a fun event.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you to them for putting it on. They do an outstanding job. The dinners are fun. The raffle was outstanding. There was so many prizes. The camping area, I want to go and explore that more too next year. There seems to be a lot of fun that happens out in the camping zone that I don't ever really get to because we usually get a house. The house we got is awesome, but I don't know if we want to stay there next year at that price. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was, they doubled the price on us from last year.
Yeah.
So.
We'll have to figure it out because there was also that car show going on. So I wonder if they figured that the car show was the big attraction, not Cruise Moab or what. So maybe we'll inquire on the house and then figure out what to do next. I if you ever get a chance to go to Cruise Moab, I would highly suggest it.
Yep. I agree. Concur every word. So if you guys have any feedback about the episode, have anything you want to add to this marathon here, feel free to call in. Let us know. 916-345-4744. Lots of content hitting the gram over at Snail Trail 4X4 and 4X4 Toyota Tyler. Check all that out. There's a lot of fun stuff going on. And I still haven't found anybody that has pictures of my welds on the leaf springs.
Oh.
So if anybody is listening and you have pictures of the welds on the leaf springs, I need pictures. I really want, because they turned out, that was some of the best welds I think I've ever done.
I can get some when I go home.
I know, but yours are still on the rig and it's like underneath the leaf spring plate.
A little bit.
So like I want to see the leaf spring off so you get a full, full shot of the welds.
True that. But
I was very happy with them. They all held. None of them even looked like they were beginning to stress crack or anything.
Nope.
So I was very proud of those, and I need to get you your leaf spring back so I can get that leaf spring and put it up here in the studio. So
yeah,
cool, man. That does it. Any final words for everybody out there?
Yeah, this is not meant to be a plug, but it totally is. Airing up and airing down every single day, multiple times. Dude, Morflate saved the day for sure. I'm sorry, this is going to go on. I was getting really annoyed because I've got a twin ARB still in Kermit because I'm like, I keep selling the compressors. I haven't kept one for myself yet. Yeah.
And you were finishing in half the time that it was taking me to air up.
True.
Every time.
I have smaller tires and I was airing up less pressure than you were.
I was going to 20, 25.
I was going to like 20.
Yeah, so but it's still like less than half the time. Like I was getting annoyed with it, and I was like, I need to get one of my 10.6 compressors.
Need to get a compressor,
right? Oh man, yeah. When the batch comes in, I'm keeping one. So
I might need another.
Yeah. All right. So with that, my friends, keep crawling.
I got one for you.
Joke time for the kiddos.
Why do bees have sticky hair?
I don't know why.
Because they use honeycombs.
Got it. Okay.